with our presenters of benefits update.
President Mead, Dr. Goffney, and members of the board, we have for you today a presentation with for a benefits update. We have Dr. David Villarreal, which will be presenting for you today. We also have other members from our department, the Human Resources Department, that are here to support Dr. Villarreal, and that is Dr. Nathan Boughton, Executive Director, Dr. Keena Bradley, Director. We also have with us Maggie Parker, which is a consultant from Gallagher, and Cliff Cobb, which is also a consultant and works very closely with us in our department on a daily basis. Dr. Villarreal.
Good evening. Goffney, President Mead, and members of the board. Is that before we get started, I do want to publicly thank two big support systems that I've had, actually three. Number one is Maggie Parker from Gallagher, and number two is Cliff Cobb, and number three is Keena Bradley. They have been great supports to me in the 2 months that I've been in this position. I have learned a tremendous amount, and so I hope that the information I am able to bring to you today will help better explain the discussions that we've had for next year's recommendations for benefits. I want to begin by saying that we're going to divide this presentation into 4 separate components. So we'll have an overview, and then we'll talk about the plan recommendations, how we came to the recommendations, the claim development, as well as the increases that are being proposed for the voluntary plans or voluntary programs. I first want to start off by saying that Aldine continues to remain self-funded, and we're currently with Aetna as our medical provider, and our stop loss with Aetna for an individual stop loss is at $750,000. So what that means is that if a person, let's say, had a $1 million claim, is that the district would pick up the first $750,000, and then stop loss would go into effect, and the next $250,000 would be covered. So that's what an individual stop loss is. We currently have 3 plans that we do offer to our employees. The first one is Memorial Hermann ACO, which stands for the Accountable Care Organization, and there are about a little over 3,000 employees enrolled in that program. The next one we offer is the Open Access Plan, also through Aetna, and we have close to 3,000 employees in that program. In Kelsey Care, we have 154 employees enrolled. We'll talk more about Kelsey Care as we go through the PowerPoint. Currently, the district contributes $330 per employee per month for benefits, and that ends up to being approximately about $25 million cost to the district. The minimum requirement is at $225 per employee per month, and we did a survey of, I think it was 5 different districts in the Houston area, and it ranges anywhere from $318 per month up to a high of $530 per month. So there's about a $200 range there. We're going to go directly into the discussions and the recommendations that we've had about benefits for next year. Is that Kelsey Care was introduced last year into the benefit options for employees. And there were a number of employees who felt very strongly about having Kelsey as one of our options. So we did have it as one of our options for this year. However, there's a very low enrollment. There are about 154 current employees enrolled in Kelsey Care. It's also one of the most expensive plans that we offer. So we have discussed about removing Kelsey Care because as of July 1st of this year, the physicians under Kelsey Care are actually under Aetna's Open Access Plan. So if we do remove Kelsey Care from our plan options, people under Kelsey would still have access to their physicians, but through Aetna. And this projected claim, it's a 6 bullet down. That is the $59,000. That is the amount that is going to be spent that is less for the district. And we'll talk more about a different number for Kelsey Care as we go on. The next bullet actually talks about it, is that since it's also our highest premium plan, is that we'll be losing approximately $441,000 if we remove Kelsey Care. So the overall increase to the plan is estimated to be about $382,000. The next component is that we would like to discuss adding the $250 separate ER copay to the Open Access Select Plan. We have a larger amount or larger number of people that are going to the emergency room rather than to their primary care physician or using urgent care, so that's driving up the cost right there. By adding the $250 separate ER copay, we hope that that would deter people from going to the emergency room. And the next slide that we'll look at talks about another option to consider to help with deterring people from going to the emergency room versus an urgent care. Adding ReadyMD. That's a telemedicine provider. And because we have a higher than average use of people going to the emergency room, we were talking about adding telemedicine provider as an option. This is, if you're familiar with FaceTime, it's very similar to that. The person calls in, they can see the physician sees them, they can describe their symptoms, the physician can actually see them. So for example, if they have a bruise or they think their finger's broken, they can actually show the physician their finger. And the physician can look at it to see if it's bruised, is it bent, can they move it? So it's those kinds of things that they can do through ReadyMD that may make it less favorable for a person to visit the ER room if they break a finger. Now, certainly if there is a true emergency, if a person's having chest pains, we want them to go to the ER. We don't want them to call ReadyMD. If a person's having extreme head pains, we want them to go to the ER. So we don't want to discourage that for those extreme situations. We just want to offer another alternative, that there's ReadyMD out there. We also were discussing waiving the deductible for the generics on our Open Access Select Plan. Now, our Memorial Hermann ACO plan, we waive the deductibles for generics. So we want to make it align with our Memorial Hermann healthcare plan by waiving those deductibles. So there's going to be a short-term increased cost to the district, but the long-term benefits to the district would be accounted for by people who adhere to their medication, and people who tend to adhere to the medication don't have the more critical issues that may require trips to the ER and more medical attention. The next exciting discussion we were having is to join the Texas Education Collective, or TEC, for prescriptions. And the Texas Education Collective, it's a group of primarily school districts and public entities that have joined together, because what that'll do if we do join the TEC is that'll give us better discounts from the drug manufacturers, as well as a higher rebates from the drug manufacturers. So for example, this year we had probably close to $2 million that we received back in rebates for this year. If we join the TEC, which we would be at a tier 4 level, which is the highest tier right now, we went to a tier 4 when HISD joined the TEC. So the numbers in their district actually pushed them into tier 4 status, winning at the tier 4 status. So again, it would increase our rebates and give us greater discounts.
Can I ask you a question?
For prescriptions? Sure.
Before, we didn't join the TEC because if we joined it, we couldn't get out of it, correct?
No, that's different.
Is it the same thing?
No, it's something different.
That's TRS, President Mead. Yes.
Okay. Not the same thing.
Not the same.
There was a
We were,
question
we were also part of another collaborative in collaboration with HISD and Katie, and we are no longer a part of that collaborative, but they have also joined the Texas collaborative because they are taking advantage of this tier 4 opportunity. And because it encompasses many more districts in the state of Texas, and as a result of that, it has pushed us up to a tier 4. It's a tier 4, and I want to make sure I'm using the right language, Dr. Villarreal. It's a tier 4, is it district or a tier 4?
It's a tier 4 for the TEC.
Yeah, tier 4 for TEC, and so we take advantage of the best opportunities or the best discounts for the district. Now, the employees don't see a direct impact in terms of getting reduced rates, but they see indirect impact because the district benefits from rebates so that we do not have to increase the amount that the employees have to contribute. So it's indirect, it indirectly impacts the employees.
The last bullet here says as more districts join, do we have any idea the percentage of districts that are already a part of this program?
We know that before we even, when we started having the conversations, they started off at, was it a tier 3? And by the,
Three when
it was
conversations
tier
started,
3 when we
yes.
first started
Yes.
having the conversations, and then we know that HISD and Katy joined, and it automatically became a tier 4, and that would include our participation. So we know that as they continue, I don't have that the number, but I believe that Dr. Villarreal can get that for us.
Ms. Parker may know this information too.
Yeah, I don't know the exact number off the top
You
of
have
my
to
head,
talk
but
on
I
the
do
mic.
know, sorry. People keep me talking on, so I assume that everyone can hear me. So I don't have the exact number of school districts that are currently engaged in the Texas Education Collective. I do know that it has, Ms. Chapa mentioned that it has been growing consistently over the last few months. And so currently tier 4 pricing is the most aggressive one. It is gonna help bring the Aldine School District about another $1.3 million in rebates on top of the rebates you've already been able to see and realize through your former collective. The unfortunate truth is that now that the alliance that you were previously in no longer exists, that pricing and those benefits would go away at the end of the year because it no longer exists. So this is an opportunity to make sure that you not only keep the rebates that you've been able to realize in the past, but also improve on them as well.
I have another question, but it goes back to a previous, and it's kind of a general question. We're going to be charging the $250 to go to the ER room. I mean, logically, that makes sense. That sounds like a deterrent. But do we have any data on if it's an actual deterrent? Because county hospitals, anybody can show up and you're going to go to an emergency room. You may get billed, you may not pay it. You know, it is indigent care, more or less. Do we have any real numbers on what our if it would decrease our frequent flyers to the emergency room?
So from an actuarial perspective, and I'm sorry, I'm answering for you. So from an actuarial perspective, we do believe that there is some savings for that, and we estimated that savings to be roughly $92,000, which even though it's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things in terms of your spend, that coupled with the addition of ReadyMD, we think that as time progresses and people realize that they have other more economical options other than going to the emergency room, that you will see a downshift from that and have people access care in other ways that are a little bit more cost efficient.
To follow up, then that $92,000 that we are saving, that's what's going to be coming out of the employee pocket. If we had this in place, would that add up to $92,000 for those frequent flyers?
That $92,000 savings is the deductible that they'd be
That's what I'm
paying, as
asking.
well as the fewer ER visits that we anticipate they'd be making for the first year as a result of that.
We're
As
hoping
people-
that they would shift from the ER to the ReadyMD, so they take advantage of that. That
Yes,
would be our goal.
exactly. Does that help?
I have a related question, but slightly different. I know that for various other services in the district, not health-related, that we have the opportunity to have multiple vendors for a particular service. In schools, for example, supplies, things like that. So I'm just curious to know if we must have, or if there is a cost to have multiple vendors for this RX sort of issue, or if there is a restriction to just have one. I say that because I know that I've just come back from the National School Boards Association Leadership Conference this summer, and they offer, NSBA offers the school RX cooperative as well. So I don't know if, for example, in our savings, you know, that we can put our savings into several different buckets, whether, I just don't know. I'm just asking a question. If we, obviously, we're discussing this particular opportunity for the TEC RX, but do we have to have that exclusive one, or can we have a menu of that sort of service for?
Typically, one pharmacy vendor as well as one medical TPA. One of the reasons behind that is with the new, well, no longer new, honestly, it's over 10 years old, but with the Affordable Care Act, with all of your pharmacy costs having to track towards that maximum out of pocket, having multiple vendors makes it administratively difficult to administer that appropriately and ensure that you are compliant with ACA, with the Affordable Care Act. So usually it's going to be one vendor, and in order to get any other vendors on there, you'd have to have approval from all of them, as well as the medical vendor, because they'd have to integrate with all of them. So short answer is, it's not impossible, but it's very impractical.
So I wonder if the cooperatives themselves provide the kind of service you're talking about. I mean, in other words, they obviously want to have the business and the school districts join them. So I don't know if they provide us that service that you're talking about, the logistical, taking care of all of the necessary requirements for paperwork and all of that, that would support the district if the districts were to join.
I'm not sure, but we could certainly help research that if you wanted.
Thank you.
Going back to Ready MD, is that we did get several references from different districts in the area. One was from Pasadena, the other one was from Brazoria County regarding their experiences with Ready MD. And they've both used Ready MD for about a year and a half. So they're relatively new to Ready MD, but the aspects that they talked about were very positive regarding to the ease of use, Ready MD, and the customer service that they experience and the ease of accessing the service. So I did want to mention that. For the deductibles, waiving the deductibles for the generics, I do want to let you know that it would cost the district approximately $267,000. And then if we do join the Texas Education Collective, we would actually be saving about $3.3 million. The next slide talks about the how we came to the conclusion of, or the projections for this, or for next year. And we used data from July of 17 all the way through June of 18. The annual trend for medical expenses, which is similar to inflation, it's approximately 6%, and then for prescriptions, it's about 7.8%. Overall rate action, and I'll translate this to a dollar amount, is about 4.3% in terms of what the district would be looking at if we were to look at keeping the employees' premiums the same for next year. That the district will be looking at a 4.3%, which would translate to about a $2.2 million figure. I want to direct your attention to the highlighted area towards the bottom third of the slide. Under projected total, which is the last column, you'll see an amount of the total projected incurred claims per employee per month of $41 million. That's what Gallagher is projecting that our employee claims would be for next year, for 2019. If we look at the blue area, the first blue area talks about the savings that we would get if we do join the TEC, and that would be that $3.3 million savings. For the adjustment to remove the Kelsey plan, we're looking at a savings of approximately $59,000. If we add the $250 ER copay to the Open Access Select plan, we're looking at approximately $92,000. However, if we're looking to remove the prescription, the generic, the deductible for the prescription, for the generics of the prescriptions, we're looking at incurring $267,000 as a cost to the district.
Okay, and again, just to be clear, that $267,000, which if we remove that, will result in that estimated $3 million saving.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time? That if
I'm looking at the blue, and I may be wrong. Removing the prescription deductible on generic, right, will cost us $267,000. But that's the estimated cost, I guess you would call it the rebate or whatever, from the prescription plan itself, we would save $3 million.
Correct.
That's the correlation.
Correct, yes.
So,
But they're two separate, is that, yes, we would lose the $267,000, but we'd also be gaining the $3.3 million.
that's what I was saying.
Correct, yes.
Correct.
May I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Once you go from the generic, does that mean that the employee will pay full price for their prescriptions out of pocket?
For the name brand or for the generic?
Generic. Generic you're doing away with.
They wouldn't pay the deductible for the generic. We removed the generic, so the plan would actually kick in, the co-insurance would kick in.
That would be just the deductible, Ms. Bourgeois. Yes, ma'am.
Because I know generics.
They would
usually
still
for
get the generic, they just wouldn't have to pay the deductible.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, the next slide, the top of the next slide, the additional funding from Aldine, I do want to point out that number, that's a $2.2 million that I referred to previously. The district, if employees' premiums were to remain the same, the district would have to pick up the $2.2 million to balance it. On this slide, we're comparing this year's insurance rates with next year's projected insurance rates. If you look at,
I'm going to ask, stop for just a second and go back to the statement that you just made about the $2.24 million. So my question then is to our financial officer. Does that mean that this amount that he is telling us, if you'll go to the slide before, is not already included in our approved budget?
We did not budget 2.2 million. We did budget about 1.5 million for additional health fund expenses. But this projection is slightly higher than what we have set aside already. That is correct.
So the 1.5 million would mean that we would be out 750,000 or something
We would have
from
to.
this difference.
That is correct.
Okay.
But this is a projection.
Okay.
And I will tell you that for the 17-18 year that we just finished, we set aside 2.5 million and we only had to use about 900,000
I
of
see.
that. So the plan design changes that were put in place did help us. So the district did not have to assume all of that cost. So because it's still early, this is a projection, and of course, we're anticipating that projection, the actuals will be lower than the projection. But we know that things change from month to month.
Okay.
So at this time of the year, it's usually about this amount.
Okay.
But we fared far better than we had planned for, when we ended the 17-18 school year.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So if we don't increase it, it's gonna cost us an additional 2.2 million, but you've already included in the budget 1.5 million?
That is correct.
So like Ms. Fields said, it's good, and we were shortfall of 750,000?
That is correct,
So we'll have to
for
make that
budget
up.
purposes.
Okay.
But that, again, that is only if we renew what we have now. If we make the changes.
If we make
that-
the changes,
that-
No, this is with the changes.
without the changes, it would have been a more significant increase.
That is correct. This is without the changes. I mean, this includes the changes, I'm
Right.
sorry. So the projected deficit is 2.2 million.
Is that taking into account the fact that we have less employee, like less teachers this year than we did last year?
I would think so. I would think so. Does
Is
it
that-
take that into account,
It was
Mr.
actually
David?
based on a set number of employees based on last year. So it may
Last
be
year, so we
even lower.
probably will be okay. Well, we won't be at 750,000, might be less than that. Could be.
One of the things I do want to piggyback off of what Dr. Alfred Stevens was talking about, it's always a moving target because the data that was collected was over a 12-month period. For example, we just ended summer break. So a lot of employees went to the physician, went to their doctor during the months of June and July, and we're incurring more expenses because they went to the doctor. Typically, those months will peak, June and July, and then August it'll go down, September it'll go down, November it'll start to peak because of that week of Thanksgiving, December it'll peak again, January it goes down. So again, these projections were based on that 12-month history, but it could be a single person that has a catastrophic illness, and that could send the plan going way up. Or it could be where we're level, where we don't have anybody that has a catastrophic illness or has a premature baby. So it's really, it's a moving target. We really never know what it's going to be from year to year or from month to month.
right, and in addition to that, this 2.2 is calendar year projection, correct?
Correct, yeah.
And remember, we budget on a fiscal year basis. So this is on a calendar year, so this 2.2 could actually be over the course of 2 budget cycles, is what I'm saying. So it's not like it would be all in the 18-19 budget that we're in right now. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That makes sense.
Okay.
I get thinking what has me confused is that early on in this presentation, we were saying remove the Kelsey Care HMO. And so I was surprised to see the plus Kelsey Care funding difference of 404. If we're removing it, explain that.
58,000, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, but the 442,000.
It was 59.
442,000.
But
If we're
we've got it.
removing Kelsey Care, why are we funding that? Or is that something different?
442.
Where I am?
Plus Kelsey Care funding difference, 142,000.
Right.
Yeah, but if we were moving them, why are we showing it?
It's going to be a result of the premiums that we're losing from Kelsey Care, because Kelsey Care is our highest premium plan that we do offer.
Yes.
So we're losing the premiums that would typically come through Kelsey Care.
Yes, we're losing that revenue.
Okay. Is there a different way of putting it then?
Than that.
Than saying plus funding difference? Because it sounds like to me we're still paying something to Kelsey Care. That's how it reads to me. Right. But I understand what you're saying. If we remove
We're losing
Kelsey
their
Care,
revenue.
the premium difference is going to be that. But the way that it looks up there confuses me.
Yes, sir. We will
That's-
make that
that's-
adjustment,
I
absolutely.
mean, I don't know what you would call it, but
The wording is what you're saying.
that's what I'm
The
saying.
wording is kind of misleading. Kelsey Care, because it's not funding.
Okay, so this slide,
It's the
again,
it's the transition from Kelsey to Aetna. Yeah,
Or just
I'm
loss
just
of
trying to,
revenue.
I'm trying to
Just
talk
loss of
through.
revenue or something.
That's it, loss of revenue. So
Yeah.
we'll make a notation.
Loss of revenue from the.
Loss-
yeah,
loss of
from the
revenue.
deduct- Yeah, okay,
Thank you.
okay.
slide compares this year to projections for next year. And the middle section removes the Kelsey Care plan. I do want to highlight under 2019, the enrollment we use for each of the plans, we use the same number as last year for projections for next year, but that number may be lower because of decreased number of employees. So right now, if we keep the employee premiums the same, and I'm looking at the employee only under Memorial Hermann ACO, 186.52 is what they would be paying, what they paid this year. We're looking to suggest that for next year. The employer costs would go from 330 to 357, but that takes into account that $2.2 million. Is that we wouldn't be contributing anything beyond the 330, but the 357 does take into account that $2.2 million. That's why it looks higher than 330. So the entire plan to fund would be 554.45 for that employee-only level. And the percent cost share, that means that the district is picking up 66% of that $544.45. And as you go down the column, you can see the percentage that the district is funding for each level and each plan.
This is a question then for our CFO. I can see that the employees' premiums pretty much stay flat. We're picking up the extra cost. That's what it looks across the board. Given inflation, what happens? How will that, I know in my own life, just saying something doesn't change when I don't make any more money or when costs going up, I'm impacted negatively. Do we have any idea how that's keeping it the same, which they're gonna like? But the truth is cost of living goes up.
Right, and so,
We had this conversation, so.
right, well, as Dr. Chopper just said, you didn't hear us say this quick point, that this is taking into account a little bit of inflation, that's why it's gone up. But the additional expense is not, if you will, being passed to the employee.
Yeah,
We are assuming the cost of that, we would like, thank you, to assume the cost of that additional expense in lieu of passing it on to our employees.
yeah, I understand that. At some point in time, just because we have such great employees, we're going to have to give them raises,
Yes,
right?
We
To
understand
absorb
that.
some of the inflation
Sure.
of the real world at some point in time. So I'm just trying to anticipate, a question is that without raises, keeping the same isn't helping me.
right, right. So that's why we need butts and seats,
Right.
right?
And
We
we
need,
actually had an extensive conversation, but in light of not giving raises, we can't pass the cost
No,
on.
I understand.
And so we talked about historically how the state we're very blessed in Aldine, and making sure that our employees know how blessed we are, because TRS passes those costs on to the employees, whereas in Aldine, historically, those costs have not been passed on. And so it's ironic that we had a similar conversation in a cabinet meeting.
Right.
Well, you've given me a talking point too, because now that validates the decision the board made not to go with TRS.
Right.
Because if we'd gone with TRS, we wouldn't have had a choice in this matter at all.
No, sir. Absolutely not, across the state.
Being self-funded, it just gives us a much greater degree of flexibility and to change plans if needed, to increase premiums, decrease premiums. So we have much more flexibility than we would have if we were to go to TRS. We're going to transition into two voluntary plans, our dental plan and then the YMCA plan. So again, these are two voluntary plans that the employee pays for. We are with Cigna as our dental carrier, and we're going into year 4 of a 5-year contract. Being in a multi-year contract has been very helpful in this case because there is a 7% cap rate within the contract. We actually had claims that were almost 25% higher than the money that was brought in through the premiums. So if we didn't have the cap rate, we would have to pay 25% more versus a 7% cap rate that is currently being recommended.
Okay.
And so that really has helped us. They're also going to be asking us, more than likely, for another 7% in 2020. So we don't see this as a one-year solution where it's just, or a one-year event where it's just 7% for 2019. We're also looking at 7% for 2020, which is our last year with Cigna as a contract.
Do we have an idea if the loss ratio that is that high is because there has been more use by the employees, or because the dental costs have gone up exorbitantly, or?
It's probably going to be more use in terms of as the issue. We have about 5,800 employees enrolled in our dental plan. So we can view it in two different ways. Number one is that there's a lot of preventative care that is going on out there where people are getting their teeth checked and they're getting the issues addressed. Or we could look at it as the dental or the oral issues may have become so severe that the procedures needed to correct it are very expensive. And it's probably a combination of both. This is the actual dollar amount put on this chart per paycheck. So if you look at the dollar increase, the very last column to the right, you can see how it's going to affect each employee's paycheck. So we're looking at anywhere from 20 cents for employee only under the dental HMO basic to a maximum of $3.54. So the 7% sounded more than the 20 cents, the 32 cents, the $1.15. So it's very minimal in terms of the actual dollar amount for the dental plan.
What do most of our employees have?
That I'm going to refer to Mr. Cobb.
The bulk of the employees are in the PPO plan. There's probably about 3,000 people in that plan. Then the next one would be the HMO Plus with about 2,000 or so. And then the least amount of employees would be in the HMO Basic.
Interesting. I thought it would be nothing covered. That's what it tells us.
Okay, the next voluntary plan is the YMCA. Their rates have increased incrementally, primarily due because of Hurricane Harvey. Hurricane Harvey had a drastic impact on the buildings, and to rebuild has really cost the YMCA a lot of money. So they're passing that cost on to the members, but they're very minimal. And you can see from the right-hand column, it ranges anywhere from 50 cents increase per paycheck up to $3.50.
And what is the?
People were still doing the dance.
Sorry?
Joke. YMCA.
That's, okay, I understand.
And what is the specific service that the YMCA provides? I know the previous one was dental. What is this?
YMCA has a wide array of services. Just being, I was a member of the YMCA since I was, I think, 5 years old.
Right.
So they offer swimming lessons, they offer daycare, they offer fitness classes,
Okay.
they offer weight rooms, they offer aerobic classes.
Okay, so this is a rate to participate in the YMCA services? Okay, all right, okay.
Okay, good question. Where are they?
And
are they
in
nice?
Aldine, we are a Y without walls.
$44.
We don't have a YMCA in Aldine, per se.
Right.
We
For our
don't, we,
employees, and our employees don't live in the, necessarily live in the district.
They love YMCA.
Ys are scattered throughout. I know they have the one downtown, they have the one in the northwest area of Houston. There probably is one up in Humble or Spring is what I'm guessing. I don't know that for sure. But they probably have them strategically placed north, northwest, west.
Yeah, Klein, they're in Klein and Cy-Fair. They're all over where our employees are. Yeah.
I understand that.
ours are mostly after-school programs, our Y is.
Yeah, but this is our employee plan. Mhm.
Next slide, these are our current medical benefits and their rates. So you can see the three plans that we currently offer, the Memorial Hermann ACO, the Open Access Select, and Kelsey Care HMO. So this gives you an idea, summarizes what employees pay per paycheck. And the next slide would be our pharmacy rates.
Can you go back to?
Let us look at what's happening and we want to see the rates.
So you can see Kelsey Care, their premiums are going to be the most expensive.
We're not considering that anymore, right? Because West Premium dropped. So we can only look at the first two.
Yes, so Memorial Hermann would be the ACO, and then the
706.
cheapest plan would be the Open Access Select.
This is cheaper than TRS, y'all.
So we're going to move the 125 and 125 employees that are currently under Kelsey Care will be moved over to the Open Access Select.
154 be
154.
mapped into the Open Access Select. And if they chose to go to the Memorial Hermann ACO, they could. But we're anticipating that a majority, if not all, would go to the Open Access Select plan.
So most of our employees are with the Open Access Select?
About 3,000.
It's fairly even.
What is the max amount of family members for an employee and family?
I don't believe there is a cap on children, no.
Out of pocket.
And I'm looking at the deductible of $5,000
Yeah.
on the Open Access. That's a lot of money for medical.
It seems bad, but when you come from the outside and you compare it to TRS, it's much better. It's better than TRS.
Good thing I'm old.
Yeah. I would like for them to see the comparison. If we can get a TRS comparison, I can send it to them so they can see. Yeah.
I just, I have to put myself in the shoes
The
of some of
healthcare.
these employees and see.
It's also what the employee's salary.
Exactly.
$100,000 a year, so they can
But
pay
what
that.
about, look at the employee and children, that would be like a single mother with kiddos, $472.
That money, teachers.
Now, teachers, a single,
Some employees make lots of money.
but I'm thinking of a single mother with children.
My previous experience, there were people who were working just for the healthcare. That's it. Their whole checks went towards the healthcare. Yes, ma'am. Healthcare costs have skyrocketed.
Yep.
Healthcare costs have skyrocketed. It's out of control.
It is.
Yeah.
In general, our plans are going to be richer than the plans offered by TRS. Even though they still work with Aetna, our plan's content is going to be richer in terms of the services that they do provide. And Houston, just as a general market, we're going to have one of the highest rates in terms of inflation, just because of where we are, the competition, the metropolitan area. So your major metropolitan areas like Dallas, San Antonio, Houston, they're going to have the higher rate increases compared to an area like McAllen, Texas. Here's a slide that addresses the pharmacy benefits.
That's the annual deductible.
Yeah, but we're waiving the deductible. Generics.
Access plan, it's $250 for individual, $500 for family deductible. Right now, it just says $250, but that's for an individual. It's $500 for a family. And we'd be waiving
We'll be waiving those
for generics, correct?
generics.
Okay, well, we'd be happy to address any additional questions.
That's listen, it is.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Villarreal and team.
But I'm gonna get it for you. It's crazy. It's crazy the cost of.
That
TRS.
concludes our part of the benefits
Your
program.
part is over.
President
Okay.
Mead.
Your party's over.
Your party's over and your part is over. So Patrick Mouton, are you ready, sir, for the bond update?
No, we had him at the top too, and then he's at the bottom. He's in two places. You can do it now. Yeah, he's in two places. He's on page 42.
Well, today was the first day of school opening. So we had 8 new campuses opening, as you all know, and those all went very well, very well. I've had a very minimum amount of complaints out there, some air conditioning not running. Got those back up, different places. I heard at one of the schools that at Anderson, came up to one of the teachers and told her that, "Am I dreaming?" So I would think that was a success. We also completed the renovations and additions at Aldine Senior, also at MacArthur, at Anderson, of course. We did some work over at Drew. 3 weeks ago, I guess 4 weeks now, Dr. Goffney and I went by there with Mabel Holt, and she asked the question, are we going to make it? So that's a usual question that I get when it's about that time. So we scheduled a visit the week before school started last week, and so that turned out really well. So that was good. We moved over 100 temporary buildings this summer, and there was some minimum complaints. I think I got an email about one. The air conditioning had an issue, but everything was up and running, the ramps, the room set up, everything was ready, student ready for Monday. We also had conversions of the intermediate schools. That work was done and ready for school opening. And so all went well, all went well. As we also look at some repairs, moving from repairs through the district, we had lighting upgrades at multiple locations over the summer as well. Those were ready and ceiling tiles in place for the start of school. So I would say all's well with the bond, all's well.
One of the pieces in your report here on page 45 is about the M.O. Campbell sound system.
Yes, ma'am.
So we had graduation last week, and for some reason, is it just because the board, the people on the stage are sitting and the projection is going elsewhere that we cannot
What
hear
I understand happened is as the photographer was moving around, taking photographs, kicked the cord. The cord pulled out for the monitor, those things sitting on the stage, the monitors, that gives you the feed, you hear yourselves. And so that was identified and corrected, but it's kind of late there. So, but yes, when we had convocation, I understand everything went very well. It's a much improved sound, and there's those dead spots aren't there. I think Ms. Chopper experienced one of those dead spots earlier in the year, so that's been corrected. That was a successful project, and everyone loves it.
So Patrick, is all of that speaker up, sound up, is that all done now?
Yes. Now, there's some tweaking and some things that we're doing, but I would say it's 99% complete. They're looking at getting more microphones, things like that, adding more channels to the system. So we have more mics than what we already own.
And the dynamics of M.O. Campbell also, so they're still learning to work with the new system. So it varies depending on the number of people that you have in the facility and the background, you get some feedback from the speaker. So it's a matter of knowing how to adjust and everything as well with the new sound, so.
I was thinking as I was looking through the board book that there was some bid out for the sound system in there, but it's already complete, so.
Yeah, that may be something else that's not part of our upgrade. That was bid months ago. The M.O. Campbell Center brought to you guys for approval.
So if nobody else thanks you, I want to thank you. It's just phenomenal. I mean, just when we begin to think that the 2015 bond produced all of what opened today, it's just amazing that it all came to pass and that it was done so successfully. So you and your team
Yeah, it was
deserve
very much a team
very
effort.
huge thank you. So the only question I have, and probably we can answer it later, is what the follow-up will be to all of the additional employees that were hired for that process, the managers and all of that. So,
Of course, as those bond administrators that we hired, yes, once we get through this warranty period, and yes, we will be releasing those bond administrators and some of those field inspectors that we hired. Yes, we will be downsizing, and everyone understands that.
When will the names be put on the schools?
We're about 2 weeks away from that, so, yes. We also have marquees coming by the end of the month. They'll be up.
Questions for it?
Thank you.
And we'll have a report from the administration staff, and we'll start with Dr. Goffney.
Mr. Meade, Board of Trustees, at the last board meeting in July, we received requests for TASB Director nominations considerations that included 3 from Region 4, Mr. Tony Hopkins, who's a board member in Friendswood ISD, Georgianne Rettmeyer, who's a Board of Trustees member in Klein ISD, as well as Stephen Dennis, who's a Board of Trustee member with Channelview ISD. We thought that we might receive some additional nominees, but we did not. So it is certainly the pleasure of the board who to consider for the endorsement.
In our board package, they give us the information on all the candidates.
I would like to ask Dr. Garcia her opinion. You may be more familiar with these people than I am. Are you making any recommendations, or are you adding?
Well, I think that last month, Ms. Avalos actually was the one that made the recommendation. So if we can look on the bottom of page 30 and the top of 31, we have the summary of the Region 4 candidates and their positions. So for position A, there are the 2, and Georgianne Reitmeyer from Klein, our neighbor, has already been serving as a director. And so Ms. Avalos' recommendation last month was Georgianne Reitmeyer, and I agreed with that. And then in position C, I believe Tony Hopkins was your leadership TASB cohort, and I have every confidence that would be fine. And of course, for Bob Alvey's position, position F, that is a large district position that we would, I think, simply be confirming. So I think the recommendation is Reitmeyer for position A, Hopkins for position C, and Covey for position F.
Okay, so we will have discussion tonight.
Do we need to, something we need to vote on for tomorrow night?
Officially
I think so.
endorse tomorrow night.
So everyone should look over the literature and determine by tomorrow night who you would like to make.
Recommendations.
Okay.
In addition, Mr. Mead and Board of Trustees, if you go to number 2, review board training plan for 2018, 2019. Let me tell you, this entry to, as superintendent, we have been running, hitting the ground running, and we have a lot of great things happening. In addition, we discuss board training and how we're going to gel together as a team. And one thing that I want to make sure of, because I know that we do have a tendency, I have a tendency to move fast and have an executive leadership team cabinet that's moving fast. I want to keep you abreast of it. I'm also excited that a lot of the pieces have already been put into place as far as a strategic plan. So working with Katie and Don, we'll be pulling those groups in, and we need to officially roll that out. Many of you are already familiar with some pieces of it, but I don't think everyone is familiar. And so there was a suggestion, and I loved it because it won't require an additional day, but maybe there was a thought that instead of planning another day where we pull you together, that we pulled you together like an hour before a meeting that we already have scheduled for training, workshops, updates, different things like that, to keep you abreast. I'm Monday or Tuesday, it's the pleasure of the board, and it doesn't have to be every month, but at least every other month. Either a workshop or, again, an update or some type of board training as we move forward.
That would keep us from having more meetings.
Right. And is there, Yolanda and I, as we were planning, though, we want to know if you preferred Monday before a work session or Tuesday before a regular board meeting? Before a study session or Tuesday before?
My preference would be Tuesdays. I mean, because I get here awfully early on Mondays anyway. And to get here any earlier on a Monday would be very difficult. Since our board meetings don't start until later on Tuesday, to meet earlier on a Tuesday seems to me, it would work for my schedule.
To me, it's fine. Tuesday.
What we could do is, so you wouldn't have to go home, we could provide a lunch, and then we could have like a working lunch type learning experience. So we'll work towards that.
So what time are we talking about starting on Tuesday? Tuesday?
5 or 5:30, because we want to begin in so that we can welcome and shake hands with the public who's coming in for our regular board meetings.
Sounds good.
Tuesday, okay with everyone?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to say something, and I'm gonna preface by saying this. For me to move forward with this board, I have to speak on the things that are deep in my heart. And for this board to be hypocritical to endorse people from different regions, and you could not endorse someone from your own board, you know, this stuff, it gets to me. In 2015, I was Southern Region Director for the National School Boards. And you chose not to go to the convention to block me. And now you're talking about endorsing someone from other school districts? You people are just hypocritical. And so for me to deal with these things, I have to speak on it because I'm not going to hold it in. But I want you guys to know that you guys are just unbelievable. And I'm finished with that.
Yes, ma'am. Also, Mr. President, Board of Trustees, we have a letter of support for near Northwest Management District. It's just an informational item that we wanted to include. We've been working and meeting thanks to Able. Page 307. When I met with Mr. Norton, we had discussed, Mr. Norton, right, Able?
Yes.
Wayne Norton, okay. We discussed a lot. I mean, enjoyed the conversation, enjoyed the talk about the projected improvements in the area, and he'd ask for some support as he goes out and tries to, again, continue to make our pathways and different things even safer for our children. And so I wanted to make you aware of a letter that I'd written in support and that we've given him so that he can go out and help make part of a road a little bit safer. And so it's just an informational item, and it sounds like it's going to be some other opportunities to do a similar project in the future to get some support in other areas. But he seemed optimistic. Abel, what did you think?
Correct. So they're trying to see if HGAC will support or provide extra financing for their projects. So they work well with them, so hopefully this will help out.
It's right in there.
If I can offer anything, that I am the county liaison to HGAC. We have a meeting tomorrow. If there's any way I can help you, I know Alan personally, and if there's any way that you think I could help with that decision, just let me know.
We can contact Mr. Norton and ask him.
That'd be great.
And I think that they've already started the park, or part of the clearing for that park. And we're absolutely right in this letter that the greatest effect will be on the kids at Irmal because of the proximity to that park. Of course, it's across of the heavily traveled northeastern Roslyn, but anything, I mean, those kids are out in that neighborhood and going across with their parents to this proposed park would be great.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, I've asked both Dr. Dawn Ayers Rodriguez and also Ms. Katie Rhodey to come. As you know, their department has kind of shifted and they report directly to me as we're looking at program evaluations, different audits, and looking at some different things with accountability and where we are. I'm sure you've all heard and read about the A through F, and it was just released, and how Aldine fared. And so Dr. Rodriguez, she's going to come up and just do an overview as well as a little lesson on where we are. I love it. She came up with a one-pager, which is front and back, and it's on page 308. And she also came up with just something so you can speak intelligently about it to your constituents when they mention A through F. Because everyone thinks they know what an A through an F is and what it means and what it looks like. So thank you, Mrs. Rodriguez, for coming tonight. Dr. Rodriguez.
Dr. Goffney, members of the board. Short, sorry. So you have the handout on page 308. You also have a handout, a little one-pager, so I'm going to walk you through. And if you have any questions, just stop me. But we're going to walk through how the accountability ratings were calculated and then what we're going to do based on those accountability ratings. So first things first, the accountability system this year moved to a 3-domain system, a F4 index system. The 3 domains I've listed out for you, the first one being student achievement. Student achievement is based solely on the STAR scores and STAR EOC scores for elementary, intermediate, middle, and 9th grade. And then for our senior high schools, it is a combination of STAR EOC scores, as well as your college, career, military readiness indicators, and your graduation rate. And that's the best graduation rate of 4, 5, or 6. Domain 2, there is 2 parts to Domain 2, the first being academic growth. So are we growing from prior year test to current year test? So at elementary, intermediate, middle, and 9th grade, we have growth for reading and then growth for math. At our senior high schools, we only have growth for reading ELA, and that is because our 9th grade centers house Algebra 1. So the growth that we show at our senior high schools is from that English 1 that they take at the 9th grade center to the English 2 that they take at the senior high school. Domain 2B is relative performance. And again, that is looking at our student achievement relative to other districts or campuses with similar economically disadvantaged percentages. So how are our students performing relative to those that have similar economically disadvantaged percentages? Okay. And at our senior high schools, they also include the CCMR component. So you'll see a lot of these things cycle back through each of our domains just slightly differently. And then domain 3 is closing the gaps. And that looks at a variety of indicators, including academic achievement at meets grade level or above. Again, they're looking at student progress. They are looking at academic growth. They look at English language proficiency status, so they include our TELPAS scores, and then they will also look at graduation rates. So there are 14 different student groups, so they added some this year in addition to our race, ethnic, and our programmatic ones. They added mobile versus non-mobile. They added special ed, exits. So they added some additional indicators, but I think in total, a senior high school has 138 different indicators that they have to meet in order to get full credit for Domain 3. So the way the system worked this year is in order for the district, because the district this year, remember, we had conversations previously, the district this year was to receive a letter grade, A through F. Campuses this year were to receive a rating of met standard or improvement required. And then next year, that's when campuses will also see that AF rating, okay? So in order for the district to be an A through F, A or better, or B, C, just to meet standard, not a D or an F, they had to meet 1, 2A or 2B, plus Domain 3. So we had 3 opportunities between Domain 1 and Domain 2. They picked the highest of those 3 indicators, and that was 70% of the district's overall score. The final 30% came from Domain 3. So what you'll see on that chart is we gave you, and I'm going to use the district right now, but we gave you everything across the board so that you could see where the district fared in each of the domains. In Domain 2, again, there was 2 components. And so what you'll see there is the district ended up overall with a 76.3. However, when I initially met with you, the district was to receive a rating. We were eligible to receive the Hurricane Harvey provision, but based on some of the preliminary data we had looked at, we didn't have enough campuses qualify for the not rated Hurricane Harvey provision, and so we were going to receive a rating. Well, the state got lots of feedback from the various communities saying they didn't think it was fair that districts receive ratings because all of those students together compiled impact the district as a whole. So they came back at the 23rd hour and said, we're going to take eligibility out. And basically, if you had 10% of your students, if you're in a region impacted and you had 10% or more of your students that could have potentially qualified for the Hurricane Harvey provision, we're going to give your district a not rated if you don't receive an A on state accountability. So that's how, in the public, what you'll see is we are not rated. Now, the public does see the 76. So they can take that information and basically discern that we would be a C, right, based on the ratings. And on this little one pager, it'll show you, but an A is a scale score of anywhere from a 90 to 100, B 80 to 89, 70 to 79 is a C, and then downward. So you can see we're sitting at a solid C with a 76. But the public, and according to TEA, were not rated Harvey provision. Okay. Campuses were met standard or IR this year, and they had to meet the same criteria that the district did. So it was the best of Domain 1, Domain 2A, Domain 2B, plus Domain 3. So 70% on the first part, and then 30% on closing the gaps domain. And so what you'll see, the district received a not rated. We do have some IR campuses, and IR means improvement required, and those are some sanctions on the state side. Those IR campuses being Bethune, Francis, MacArthur, and Worsham. We do have 3 campuses that qualified for not rated Harvey provision. And if you'll remember, they got to use the Harvey provision because their data calculated out to be IR. So instead of being IR, the state is now considering them not rated. Yes.
If the campus isn't rated, did that calculate into our 76 rating, positively or negatively?
So all of the campus data was included, so I'm going to give you an example. Carroll was not rated, but their data was used to determine the overall rating of the district. So all data was used to get our district rating, and so they calculated Carroll's rating, because you can see on the sheet all the way across, it tells you what their data is, but the campus is not rated. But it did go in, their data did go in to calculate the overall rating for the district.
So we are not impacted in our overall rating from a campus not being rated.
We are impacted.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but I'm looking, if I'm trying to understand, if all of the data was used to give us that 76.
Right.
All right, and they called it a not rated, then it sounds like to me that since that information is already there, it's calculated into our 76. So saying that it's rated or not rated then does not adversely impact us in
It
that
doesn't
number.
adversely impact
That's what I'm
us.
asking.
But everybody knows the number.
Correct.
It doesn't necessarily negatively impact administration, but it does the children, because when you have a school that's IR and you're not working to improve it, the children suffer.
I agree
And I
with that.
think that the education commissioner, he dropped the ball on this one, trying to appease to a larger school district, because they were either going to have their board members taken away or 4 schools closed. So he comes back and says, look, not now, not yet. The children are suffering. And when he made this deal for not rated, which helps improve our district, the children are the ones that suffer.
So I will tell you that, and I was getting to that, but regardless of rating, all of these campuses that are not rated, we are putting comprehensive plans in place, and we are
Because in
going
actuality,
to.
they're IR.
Correct. We're gonna pretend for all purposes that they are IR. So they will engage in the intervention activities. We will assign them PSPs. So we will do everything to ensure that we're making progress with those campuses, because at the end of the day, and I'm gonna give you Goodman as an example, is a year 2 IR, right?
Right.
So they're not rated this year.
And that's
But,
the same.
but at the end of 2019, if we don't do our due diligence and make sure we've put plans in place, if they become IR again, they don't start all over and become IR1. They would be IR year 3.
And my contention is that if they would have been dealt with within that first 2-year frame, then our children wouldn't be in IR. Our schools wouldn't be in IR, because previous administration dumped that right here, meaning the board dropped the ball. Whatever happens with the school, it's on us. We're the oversight. And if we have 4 schools that's in IR, then we weren't being accountable or holding administration accountable to our children. And I think that when the commissioner made that decision, he really dropped the ball, because our children cannot fail STAR tests. See, we expect everything of them, but then when it comes on the administration's back, they get a break. Our children don't get a break. And I'm just compassionate about that. That's not right.
What I can tell you is we've already started working. SAS, our administration, this team, they've already had meetings, everything. We are treating this data as if it doesn't matter what the state does with it. We're taking it very seriously, and I can assure you of that. And that we've already done things to work with the teams and to work with providing support and everything else. And you're going to hear about that. So I don't know what happened in the past. I can't speak to it, but I can tell you that we've had conversations at the cabinet level, and we have a plan in place. They've already met with principals, and from what I can tell, and I can discern pretty well, the principals are excited about the support and excited about moving forward.
Well, in defense of the board, I think we have looked at this. Every time we get reports back, we ask why we're having this, and we have to, and our area superintendents come back and tell us what they're doing to stop this. So as a board, I think we have done that.
But we're not supposed to only ask questions. We're supposed to make people accountable. If you see a problem somewhere, it's not cabinet's fault. It's the superintendent's fault, because that's the person we hire. So we don't hold the superintendent accountable. That's what happens to our schools.
I kind of tend to agree with it, and I'm going to split a hair.
You always do.
I know. is that when we first got the text and saw the conditions of our school, I felt like I'd been slapped.
Yeah.
I also felt like I was lied to, because we've been talking about this for years, trending in the right direction, trending in the right direction.
Right, trending and never getting to that point.
And we've bought it, that we're trending to the right direction. I can't say that I understand this very well. I know I've now gone to 2 or 3 different trainings with it, and it's still fuzzy to me. But I tend to agree with Ms. Bourgeois is saying, and also I understand what Steve is saying, is that we need to be more diligent. I am not a curriculum person. You know, I'll talk to you about politics and math all day, and business all day. I am not a curriculum person, but as a board, I agree with Ms. Bourgeois.
Because it shows
We
up
need
on
to,
our
we're,
children's
we're, from this day forward, I think we need to be a little bit more diligent in looking at what this means, because we're hurting our children. We're not hurting us as individuals, but, you know, as I say, we've got ours. But, you know, for a child to go 2 or 3 years and not being, and not being supported in the way that child goes,
I wish
hurts
that we
the
could have
child.
gotten to this acknowledgement sooner and not handed all this over to Dr. Goffney.
But
I mean, not trying to say that you can't handle the job. I'm just saying that we should have held previous administration responsible. That's what the board is for.
I think one of the things that would be helpful that we have received before is the longitudinal view of the IR situations, because we have had the situation, and it's good to see which school, what year, how many years they're out of IR based on the support that's given. So, I mean, it's one thing to see this are the results for the previous year, but it's a different thing to see the effectiveness, as Dr. Goffney was saying, about the initiatives and the efforts that are put into that. So we have seen that before, the longitudinal view of, and so maybe next month or sometime we can see that as well, because we'll see that perhaps some of these that are in IR for the first time had been successful. So there are other elements as well, and I have always been one to say, you know, that the accountability system really is you know, and we've talked about it before here on our board, that there are particular provisions of our accountability system that we as board members should petition our, you know, our commissioner and others about because of the unfairness of the system itself. But
How long does it take a school to go into IR before they're considered IR? How long is that process?
So it's a 1-year process. I will say, as far as results are concerned, we do have to remember that this new system is calculated completely different from the previous system. So in our previous system, they only had to get to approaches grade level. And so this new system has become more difficult, and we're hoping to address some of that with our school improvement efforts, but really getting campuses and teachers to understand the impact of not getting kids just to pass tests, but how can we get them to that meets and masters grade level. So what you'll see is some of these IR campuses, and I'll give you Worsham, for example, has never been an IR campus. And if you look at their straight out approaches grade level data, they're middle of the road. It's the moving the kids to the next level. How are we taking a kid that's passing and moving him to that meets grade level and that master's grade level? And that will be a conversation that we have with all campuses, not just the ones that are IR or could have potentially been IR. Those are things that we share on a continuous basis when we're meeting with them.
What I would like to see too is that this report that we have, this accountability report, preliminary, if we could see that on a, maybe not monthly, but, you know, on a regular
This
basis.
is annual. It only shows annual.
Well, I understand.
But what we can provide for you is looking at the supports that we're putting in place and an overview of the activities that we're engaging with our leaders and with our campuses and that kind of progress. We can bring something of that nature to you and give you an update.
I'm with Paul, that's what I had mentioned before. We need to see more reports on what's going on and not just get it when it's late.
Well, the great thing about it is utilizing the department for what we're doing and going through this year and restructuring and reorganizing and even taking the curriculum audit and other things, the recommendations in it. And I think if you guys will just give me time, I assure you that we're going to make progress. And as we move forward, this didn't happen overnight, but if we'll stay the course and can bring everyone together, you're gonna see improvements. Because I've told the teachers, I stand by this, and I've seen it happen. You know, we're not responsible for how kids come to us, but we are responsible for how they leave us. And so we can add value to every child. That's it. And that progress, the good thing about this system is you do get points for progress. And so what I'm also excited about is the fact that Ms. Rhodey is on our team. It was a God thing because she led the schools that were in IR in a neighboring district, and her schools came out of IR. So she's been here, and it was way worse than what we're dealing with. And so our principals are hungry. Everybody is, we're not going to use this to beat our teachers up because it doesn't work. I promise you it doesn't work. But if you guys will just stay the course, I want to know what you want to see, and we'll work on giving you that. But if you'll just let me be the superintendent, and I'll bring you information. And then if you want additional information, I can bring it. But we don't want to spend hours preparing reports for you when we're trying to provide support for our principals and leaders.
On the reports and then the actual.
But I promise you, I believe in being transparent because it is a team effort. But this is not hard, guys. It's not. It is going to be a process. And I think, honestly, we relied on putting good principals in position, and that's definitely important. You can get a Dr. Watson who can bring Nimitz out and make extremely good progress, but we've got to have systems in place from the district level and district expectations that provide support so our campuses aren't existing in silos and relying on someone to ride in on the great white horse and make a difference. So anyway, we've had these conversations, but please don't panic. Just don't panic. This is a good place to be in. You know, when the 76 came out, even though we weren't rated, I have colleagues who would love to have that 76. And so even the campuses, there are some that are a little worse than others, and we've looked, okay, how long has that leader been there? And so we've got to have conversations about that. But meanwhile, we've got to have supports in place in order to move them forward. So what else do y'all have? Because we need to.
Good question.
Yes, ma'am.
What is a possibility that all this could be corrected? Is it a realistic expectation within the calendar year that we would be?
Well, I can say we can see progress, and coming out is very realistic.
Very realistic.
By the end of the year?
Not every. I am one of those that I would gamble, but I assure you of this. We will make progress. But next year, you will see improvement. And I can't promise you anything, but I can assure you we're going to work tirelessly and fearlessly to address the issues that have caused us to be in this predicament. Yeah.
Well, but for clarification, the ratings come out once a year.
Yes.
So it's an enduring rating for a year.
Right.
And so you make progress through the year until you find the results from the following year's
The way it was
results.
done this
Yeah,
year, as
so-
you were saying, is very different to the way it's been done in the past. And that's made the difference in the rating.
And I assure you, those that with less affluence, let me just get on my soapbox. I don't make excuses. We say we make progress, and I believe in that. But I tell you, those that don't have as much poverty as we have, they have an A. They have an A right now, and they haven't even taken a test yet. So just know that. Our teachers are working hard. They are doing magic. And so you say we have to wait until they take the test. There are certain schools that they don't even have to take the test. We can already say they're an A because their kids were born on third base. Our teachers are doing magic, our principals, for the most part. And so we just need to tweak and put some systems in place and tighten some things. And I'm optimistic, very optimistic about Aldine's future with these leaders in this room.
We will hold you accountable.
Oh, listen, that's what I live on. I love it, yes.
Thank you.
I have for you, unless you have any additional questions.
And please, kudos to Dr. Rodriguez, and because they're not just doing the normal, this is her normal job, but we have taken the curriculum audit, and we've gone through, that was probably the most exciting day that I've had, even more exciting than meeting with kids, because we went through every piece, and we'll be bringing you reports on that, and we looked at different programs that we're going to be evaluating. We're going to be partnering with universities to come and look at some of the things that we're doing, and I think you're going to be excited because we feel one way, but when you see the data and you see how easily, if we'll just do the work, I think you're going to be slightly amazed at how easy it is to change some things. So I'm excited about working with you guys, and thank you for taking on these additional challenges. Katie, you thought you were just gonna be doing a district improvement plan?
No, I'm happy to help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I don't think y'all want anything else from me. But I'm operations too. Okay, so operations, we have some bids, and so we have Mr. Mouton who's here. If there are any questions about the approval of the competitive bid for Eisenhower or for Aldine or any of the contract renewals for plumbing services, electrical services, or the marquee sign services, which he's kind of alluded to.
Yeah, we normally just run through those, look through them on our computer as we're going through. There's questions, because when I read the 394 pages, I write down notes, okay, and ask some questions on them. So it's best sometimes to see them.
Yes, sir.
And I've got some pages. Let me see if I can do that. One of my question is, and like I say, I do get upset myself. I'm like Patricia though. When I see the same schools over and over and over, the same schools not going somewhere, and I can name the same ones she mentioned. I see them all the time. I see Francis all the time across our stuff that they're not doing good, and in some of the other schools. So that bothers me. I do like to see, if I'm looking at Francis here and I see 56 and 59 one time, I would love to see the 56 go to a 60 or 70
Right,
of
just
improvement.
improvement.
And when I don't see that, it bothers us too. I do ask the questions, okay? I do ask the questions about the grades, and I'm concerned. And I listen to what y'all tell me, what we're doing, what we're doing to try to improve this. I guess I should ask the question, or the president should ask the questions instead of asking, you have to say, Superintendent, what are you doing about this?
Please,
Okay?
I'll be able to tell you.
But because you do answer to us, and people answer to you. But I think we are a team, and we all want to see these kids do better. And I go along with Patricia. If a school stays this way this year and this year, those kids are never going to catch up. The ones that stayed in that process, they're not going to catch up. And so we've got to bring this up and get all kids on the same level. And so I think it's a good time, to get started and change some of these things. And like I say, when you see the same thing over and over and over, the same school, somebody has to do something. If we don't have the right principal there, if we don't have the right people there, we've got to get the right people in place to bring this up. And if we just keep doing the same old, nothing's going to change. If we don't change, nothing's going to change. So we have to do something. So I'm excited about what we're going to do and what the plans are. I'm excited with our area superintendent. I know they work real hard. And I know the kids that we have are different kids than other districts, okay? Like you're saying, we're not starting on third base. Sometimes we're not even out of the dugout yet. But we gotta get them to first base. And then what we want to see, I want to see some people go to second base. I tell people all the time, I'm not as concerned a kid going from a C to an A as I am seeing that kid go to a B, just to see the improvement. That's what we have to be concerned with, is the improvement, and if we have to change some things to do it, so be it. But the kids are our number one thing, and we have to take care of the kids. We have to do what's right for them, whatever we do. So we'll come to the superintendent and see what's happening, and I agree. The professional development, we look through the bids all the time. I don't really understand. I know some of these bids are, if we use this service, here's what they're going to charge. I don't know something. I see 300 and something thousand, I did 250 something thousand. Is this stuff working? When we have a kid that takes the test, when the kid, we teach him the curriculum, and then we test him to see if it's working. How do we test to see if all of this professional development is working? We need somehow to maybe do an audit on our professional. I'm not saying any of it's bad.
No.
I'm just saying we need to look and see what is good, and we're paying a lot of money for this stuff. You look through some of these bids these people are charging for professional development, it bothers me. So I would like for us to look through our professional development and see which is good and which is not good.
And
If it's helping the kids, let's keep it. If it's not, let's get rid of it.
Just to speak, Dr. Goffney, I'm sorry, and Mr. Mead, to speak to it's me right here.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
It's Tamika.
I'm looking for you.
I'm right here. Regarding the professional services and consulting services, that particular bid was longer this month because, when we open that up, different individuals can apply to be an approved vendor, so that in the event that a campus or department wants to utilize their services, they are already on the approved vendor list. The list does not mean that someone has specifically requested
Right.
Right.
to use those services.
Understand
So
that.
just keep that in mind, because of course, those price points vary from vendor to vendor. And, but again, they've met the minimum requirements to be, for me to bring it to you for approval to add them to the list, but not necessarily that someone is going to be, or a campus or a department is requesting their services specifically. So it's a combination of both things on the list. So just keep that in mind, when you're looking at those items such as that.
I would encourage us, much like the discussion that I proposed about the athletic bids, that we go beyond just the statement that you made a while ago, I think, was that they meet the minimum bid. I would really encourage us to follow up on what Mr. Mead is saying, to perhaps develop a matrix of satisfaction for this level of administration, so that if we do have schools out there that have a favorite professional development vendor or favorite this or that, that we hold that consideration to the highest standard, not just the
Sure.
minimum standard, and so that you
For their
develop
services.
the matrix that says consideration of professional development vendors should include A and B and C and D and E, and then that there is a column at the end that says outcome related assessment will, or the effectiveness rating will be judged by something.
Which goes back to the program evaluation.
So that, exactly, so that,
I love y'all, because we've been
That's what
talking
we've been
about.
talking
well,
about.
because it is
Yes,
important
yes.
for us to say, we have been at a place of comfort for so many years in growth and development, and things are good, and Aldine was doing really, and has been doing well. But we've gotten to a place, I think, where we can say, the judgment of the people out there is great, but sometimes we have a lot of new people, a lot of new principals, a lot of new people in our schools as we went through those 1,000 students a year growth years. And so we need to, to firm that up for them and develop the parameters so that the matrix that is used by them for the selection of these professional vendors is not at a minimum standard, but is at the highest level. And so you all are going to guide them through
Dr.
that.
Goffney is smiling because that is exactly the conversation we had last week.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, good. So we're all thinking the same thing, that we have lots of programs, we have lots of support, lots of different things, and we just need to do a better job of evaluation of what we have and the effectiveness rating and the outcome of that. And for those programs that are loved by one teacher or two, that are effective for that one teacher, but not the 50 or 70 in that grade level, need to be reconsidered.
We had actually discussed an evaluation to meet minimum standards to implement the program, and then having some sort of an evaluation to determine the level of effectiveness
Exactly.
after the use of the program.
Exactly.
Measurement.
In addition, for PD specifically, a district this size normally has some oversight, an executive director of PD. And so as we are restructuring our organization chart, you'll see someone whose primary responsibility will be professional development as we're repurposing positions. So absolutely well noted.
And the same with resources, when we talked about resources, just because one or two people don't know how to use the resource doesn't make it bad for our
Right.
kids.
Right.
Like so cavalier.
Correct.
Throw it in there.
It's back, by the way.
Thank you.
Just for a second, I don't think we have any more questions for Mr.
Operation.
Mouton.
Are there any questions on operations?
I mean, there's no question, there's no
Dr.
sense.
Wait a minute.
Okay,
Can you
okay,
tell
go
me
ahead.
about the bathroom renovation at Ike? Did we have that?
That's for tonight. That's one of our bids, for Eisenhower
It says
repairs.
Eisenhower.
And that includes
B1.
restroom renovations for 11 of those restrooms.
Okay.
It'll be in there.
So we B1.
Okay.
On-
So that's gonna happen.
I wanted to jump to Patrick, I just didn't want you to have to say it, then have questions.
We do have Dr. Garcia.
We have questions.
Restrooms, and there's also going to be mechanicals, and there's some roof repairs. One area be a new roof, but most of the roof at Eisenhower will be repaired.
So we're all on the same page. Go over 1, 2, and 3 for me, please. Eisenhower, Aldine Senior High, what are those two gonna include and what those renewals include?
At Eisenhower, yeah, we are on page 39 is actual, 39 is the actual bid that I'm looking at for Eisenhower. And so we have a description there, but it's ceiling tiles replacement. Also, we talked about the 11 sets of restrooms we're renovating, and a flex restroom over there. We're creating a flex room like we have at the other campuses in the building. So any questions about Eisenhower?
We took the lowest bid, okay.
And then the next bid we move to is Aldine Senior. This one, now, we did all this work at Aldine for the last 2 years. Those was more inside the building, what you see, the aesthetics, classrooms, the restrooms were done. So this is more repairs, a whole new roof. The roof needs to be totally redone. This is a brand-new roof that we're bidding. Also mechanical piping, where our piping is starting to rust and wear from the inside. And we have replaced the mechanical pipe in there as well. And we have some fan coil units to be done. We have 89 fan coil units we're replacing in this bid.
And then the renewals.
And then,
Plumbing, electrical.
yeah, this is kind of the same thing as what Tamika was talking about, where these are annuals. When we have a project that comes up, we don't have anything set for them. But as work in these categories come about, we're asking the board to approve us to go ahead and take care of those issues during the year.
These are all things that were in the bond issue.
Eisenhower, yes, and Aldine, yes. Now, the renewals could be local or bond related. We do have local funding as well that we use through the year.
I just want to make a comment that in defense of all of this renovation or newness and new facilities that we have, in my mind, I sense that all of this has to do with the morale of the people that work there, and that all of these changes that we're bringing about, and, you know, it's all meshed in. And I think that we're going to see, like you say, what all the things that you're planning on doing, along with what's already been done. And I think it's just, especially like I'm thinking of Francis in particular. I'm thinking where they were and where they are now. And we really don't know what impacted the children there. So I think this is going to be certainly a step in the right direction in it, and the fact that we have to give it some time. But I think the fact of this new facilities is a definite plus.
We were at Francis today, and, the kids were happy, teachers were happy. I mean, it was just.
Who wouldn't be?
Very pleasant.
And where
Parents were
from they
very
they
thrilled.
came.
Yeah. They were like, thank you for building this. I mean, they're thankful, so. Dr. Garcia, I think.
Yes, Patrick, on page 50, there's a reference to a compliance technician. Would you remind us how many we have and what their primary, I know it refers to fire alarm inspections and all of that, so page 50, there's a compliance technician reference and the particular buildings they're doing, but tell us, do we have one?
That's
Do we have
from our
multiple
maintenance
of them?
department.
How many do we have of these people?
Okay, so this would be the fire alarm department, which is, I believe his name is Martin, and they work with having things inspected, these buildings inspected. So this is Herb Harris's report about the work they've done with the fire alarm technicians, is what they're talking about there.
But, so does the district have one compliance technician in the district, or how many?
Have two. There's
Have
two.
one, I don't know.
And
There's one, Martin is the one, but there's also.
our video is one of those guys working with them.
Correct. And so what'll happen is the fire marshal will come in and give us an initial report or ask us to correct some things before he comes back. These guys are the ones that determine not only what needs to be done based on the
follow up.
report, but then who needs to get that. Does that go to a maintenance? Is that a maintenance issue? Is that a construction issue? And so they divvy that out, and then we get those things corrected before the fire marshal comes
So
back.
their primary work is regarding fire alarms, or is there something else that they do?
And it's not just with the fire marshal,
Right.
there's things going on year-long
I
with
get
the
an email
buildings.
every day.
And there's always something for them to do. But the biggest thing that we talk about as operations group is when they're coming and we're preparing for them. We have operations meetings that we talk about the visits and coming, and we do assessments before, and we come and talk about what needs to be done before they get there. And
So do they work with a safety person as well, or what?
no, they work for maintenance.
No, I know, but do they work in collaboration with?
Yes,
With
yes.
other
So
departments,
you-
like safety?
Yes, it used to be James Allison. Now I've got Tom Caldwell and Michael Williams. So their role is to go and walk the buildings and help the administrators understand what they need to have done. Sometimes it's the fixing of a sign, it's tiles in place, things like that, that you don't have to tie someone else up for that.
Right, the
it would
exit
be-
signs are working or lit up or
Correct.
whatever.
Doors are unimpeded. There's things like that, yes.
That comes under safe and secure schools, doesn't it, Ken?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, but the actual corrections usually happens with the operations side.
Thank you.
Mr. Mead and Board of Trustees, those other reports are just the monthly updates from each department, and they were included just to keep you abreast, and so that concludes the operations report.
Okay. Before we go into Dr. Chopper, let me just go over a couple of the things that I picked up in going through some of these things and to get to me explanations. On page 103, that's the one where we may discuss it later, but that's the one I think where we canceled an order with one company.
That's actually under my agenda, and
Okay, then I'll
I'm
leave it alone.
requesting.
Okay.
Okay,
But
you want me to talk about it at my time?
That'll be fine.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Then let's just go to Dr. Chapa now. and
Okay,
her
but
report,
103,
okay?
I got the page number.
I'll get some more. I'll just go through them when you get to them, okay?
Yes, sir.
President Mead, Dr. Goffney, and members of the board, my agenda starts on page 54. Under the discussion items, the first four items there are my standard reports. Does anyone have any questions? I've included there the monthly Human Resources Personnel Report, the monthly vacancy list, the monthly approved staff assignments, and the personnel assignments and recommendations. Those are the first four items.
So what is the current teacher need,
Um,
professional need?
What we included there were 122 teacher vacancies, and we also had the 115 paraprofessional vacancies, but I anticipated that you might ask what the current vacancy list is. So I did, Mr. Knipple, do you mind passing these out, please? So I did bring an updated copy. We have 101 vacancies, teacher vacancies, which I thought would be essential for you to know. And to date, we have 101 teacher vacancies.
So something is happening to cover those needs or those gaps?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We have substitutes in place, and I don't know, it may be any school assistant superintendents may want to offer any other suggestions on what the campuses are doing. Dr. Davis?
It's not working, I can't hear you.
So for instance, at Davis High School, you can see there's quite an extensive list at Davis High School. And so each and every one of those classes either has a long-term sub, or we have provisions in place where the students are being served in other sections, but they're still pursuing hiring teachers for that position. And once teachers are hired, then those sections will be reinstated and those students will be moved back. But for the most part, every single vacancy is covered by a substitute. So principals are working diligently to make sure that we have the right people in the place.
Getting a lot of applicants still coming through.
President Mead, not as many as we'd like, and I'd like to remind the board that we did have a late start in the hiring because we had a hiring freeze, and we wanted to make sure that we accommodated our current employees first, that we missed opportunities with some of our student teachers, we missed opportunities with some of our business partners, individuals that would have come. So those, we didn't take advantage of hiring individuals that we would have normally hired given any other year. And so we have continued to seek out opportunities. We also have individuals that have requested release of contracts. And just so that the board is aware, we are looking, if anyone is seeking a release, we are looking to find a suitable replacement, as the superintendent has made that recommendation for us. And we have discussed that, and we do actively look for applicants. But we are not going to hire anyone. We would prefer to have a vacancy and a substitute than to make a hire that will be more difficult for us in the long run.
Reconfiguration really affected us an awful lot because
It wasn't reconfiguration, in my opinion. It was a deficit that.
It was, because if you recall, we first started with reconfiguration and we did the first move of the teachers. What hit was the second wave of moves, which was when we projected when we looked at a decreased number of students. And at that point is when we looked at having to staff our schools using the managed attrition. And so we froze the hiring, and we made a commitment to accommodate all of our employees first. And so as a result of that, we froze all the hiring until late summer, and we accommodated all of our employees. And then we started hiring any individuals for any of our vacancies.
What I was thinking was that when the teachers that were just sitting in limbo out there didn't know what positions they were going to get, and so for their own benefit, they decided to go take a job of their choice rather than not getting it. So that affected that's what affected us, I think, a lot too, right? I'm just saying I understand why we don't have them, okay?
So
And,
that's kind of twofold, because
Yeah.
some of that was also what we needed some of that was also that 10% that we needed to leave for that managed attrition.
If we're
So-
if we're in a position now to rehire, is that what
We
we're
are,
saying?
yes, ma'am.
Is,
But the applicants aren't out there.
no, they're out there. They don't know that we're hiring again. I'm thinking of, could we advertise? Especially in the fields? Are we doing advertising, you know?
We do. We notify our university partners, and we notify, we let them know the positions that we're filling. We also, and not only our university partners, also our ACP programs, because we also get from our alternative certification programs. We do notify them and let them know. We also had some postings on LinkedIn, and we have bulletin boards in the south part of the state. So we do different things. Did I say bulletin boards? I didn't mean it's billboards.
Yeah.
Sorry, we don't have bulletin boards.
we know we
I
have
promise.
we know we have them in the valley.
Billboards in the valley,
In
yes.
the valley, sure.
So we still have some of the advertising that we do, take advantage of that, but the qualified applicants, we're just not going to settle for anyone. We have applicants. We have thousands of people that
Yeah, we
apply
want
for
the best.
positions.
Now's the time to get the best.
But we still are going to make sure that they meet our minimum requirements and
But
that
Dr.
they're
Chop, I
going to
think
be.
the thing is, most of the teachers, schools have started, and they've got contracts. So most of the people that
That
are
is
looking for
correct.
jobs are already teaching at schools, and so it's just gonna be a struggle.
And they set forth the same expectations that we do. So they're not going to be released unless they find a suitable replacement.
I think he's talking about the openings that we already have.
Correct.
And then we also have.
And then there's shortages everywhere else. You have the secondary, math, science,
Most of them are
English.
hard to, that's what I was looking at. These aren't your
Bilingual.
general positions.
Yes, yes, sir.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Does that answer your question,
Yes,
Dr.
thank you,
Garcia?
thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on the standard reports? We also included for your review on page 74, it was the 2 additional CTE teaching permits for your review. Were there any questions regarding the 2 permits?
Arts and healthcare tech.
We are actually full over there, aren't we, at the technical high school? We're fully employed, are we? Fully employed there.
The Blanton, we have 2. We have a Plato lab and a math teacher that we still have. Mhm. Then I'm going to refer you to the addendum item. The addendum agenda begins on page 311. And the first item is under the consent agenda item, which is on page 312. And this is the information that we are seeking your approval to participate in the Texas Education Collective. And this is the information that Dr. Villarreal shared with you. And we would like to proceed with your approval to participate in the collective. This would yield the district $3.3 million. Are there any questions regarding this approval or this request?
Is it something that we already had the report on? Yeah.
Yes,
That's
sir.
what
Yes,
we
sir.
talked about, yeah. You just use it with everything.
The next item is located on page 316. Just wanted to update the board that we will have 19 recognitions tomorrow. So it will be it'll be a full house, and we will have, a lot of employees here with us. And finally, on page 319, it is the update to the health benefits, and it's just a one-page document that summarizes the information that Dr. Villarreal shared with you this evening. Are there any questions?
Board?
No.
No question.
If there are no more questions, that concludes my part of the agenda. Thank you.
Now for Dr. Tamika Alfred Stevens, are you ready?
Yes, sir. Are you ready?
I am ready. Let me go to page 103.
Oh, before we get to page 103.
I'm just going to mark it in my book, okay?
I think I'm ready for you on that one.
Okay.
My agenda begins on page 76.
Okay.
And the first item on my consent agenda for your consideration for approval, of course, is the ratification of this month's check register. And then beginning on page 78, that's the first bid, and that's for the custodial equipment. And there are approximately about, I think, 20 line items there that we are seeking to award the vendor that bidded the lowest price on each of the different product-specific items. So you'll see different vendors there that are being awarded with your approval. And then on page 85 is the foam soap and foam soap dispensers bid. And again, we are requesting, it's a single pager, but you can see the different milliliters per pump, if you will, and the vendor that offered the lowest price point on the proposal there. So we're recommending Buckeye Cleaning be awarded for that specific bid. And then if you look on page 86, which is the following page, that is the lawn equipment. And I'm sorry.
Before you go any further, can I get you to page 82?
Yes, absolutely. So on page 82, yes, sir. Items 12 through 15. Item 14.
Please tell me what a all-terrain litter vacuum for $39,500 is.
An all-terrain.
$39,500.
Let's see. I have the
Do we
specifics.
take them outside and vacuum? Is it like an all-terrain vehicle or something, or?
It's probably like a tractor.
It just stands out. You know,
You've seen them, though.
Huh?
Yeah, I think it's a, hold on, I have them here.
Oh, is that what it is?
It has to be like a tractor, I believe, Mr. Mead.
I think Paul told me it's like something that they use on football fields to suck all the trash. Well, you couldn't suck it up on our field because they'd suck all that black stuff out of it.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
It would.
That's exactly what it is.
But that was kind
The
of broad.
general-
Yes,
generic.
And because it's such a specific item, as you can see, many of the vendors didn't have that product, so that's
That would
why
be
they
something that
didn't
all the
bid.
schools would probably use, not just one school?
No, it's one item that we buy and they actually share it.
Oh, that's what I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
all of the schools use it.
Okay.
Yes,
Well, you
sir.
can see why it caught my attention.
Well, the price, I would imagine so. But it's not per campus.
Okay.
Okay.
I understood that.
One.
Okay. Are we ready to proceed?
Yes, ma'am. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
So we were looking at the lawn equipment, and then if you'll go down to items 4 through 7, which are I call our standard bid items, where we're adding bids each month, or vendors each month, but specifically number 7, which starts on page 101.
101.
So If you look on page 101, that's our restaurant, food, and catering, I'm sorry. But the following page, which is page 102, is where we're asking for your permission to rescind the vendor that we awarded for our physical education fitness wear. So for our PE uniforms, that particular vendor, what happens once the vendor is awarded and before we actually place an order with that vendor, we do go and make certain, once again, we check their status, making certain that they're not suspended or debarred or anything of that nature. Well, in between the time that they were approved to be the vendor for these services, or these products, I should say, they have since been debarred. So anytime a vendor is debarred, of course, we cannot do business with them. So that's why we're asking to rescind the award to, I think it's, what was it, Unipro, and to award BSN, who had the second lowest bid for our education fitness wear.
That was my question for 103. Who was the second bidder, okay?
Mhm.
We didn't go out
BS.
and rebid it again, we just took the bid and gave it to the lowest, second lowest.
The next lowest
That was
one.
my question there, okay?
Yes, sir.
What is the reason for you used the word debar?
I don't know the exact reason for their debarment. It didn't state the exact reason. It just lists whether they are suspended or debarred on the, there's a website that you use that you query the vendor name and their vendor identification number. And so that was their listing, and it gives just a date that the debarment occurred. But usually it's because of, it could be falsifying things. It could be a range of reasons why a vendor is debarred, needless to say. Okay? And then on page, I'm sorry, are there any more questions about that?
I have a question on page 105.
Okay, so on page 104 is where the approval of bid contract renewals begins. And so if we go down to page 105, Mr. Mead, that's where we have our TMF tours and travel.
I saw that, the reason I bring it up, I saw it twice. I saw it on page 105, and I saw it again on page 111.
105 and 111. I think it's, let's see, it could be a duplicate copy that's in there. 105,
I know it's down there twice.
same date.
Yeah, it is.
It's the same.
It's the same, RFP number 1415-54, which is on page 105.
This is dash 53A.
Same thing.
And this one is 1415-53A, so
Slightly different.
slightly different there.
It's a renewal.
It's a renewal. They are renewed. These are renewals. They have already been awarded on a previous RFP, and they're eligible to extend that current contractual period, and that's what these renewals are. But I will find out why they're on two different bids, because there are two different RFP numbers noted.
Jumping up here.
Are there any other questions about any of the other renewals that are noted? Okay, if we transition now to page 128, you'll see the budget amendment for this month. And again, the overall budget is remaining the same. However, we are moving some funds primarily from functions 11 and 53 into function 51, primarily because we had budgeted for the installation and maintenance agreements for different types of technology. We had put that budget in function, or these departments had put these budgets in function 11 and function 53, but after looking at what the actual product and services are and the way we have to code things, we have to restructure those functions. So thus, we're requesting that we shift that around slightly. So that's why you're seeing the movements from 11 and 53 and primarily going into 51. But these warranties on these products are at the campuses. So the kids are benefiting from the services, okay? And then if you look on page 129, again, another standard item that I'm asking your approval of, and it's the monthly tax office refunds, totaling just over $27,000, primarily because of overpayments. Nothing was due, but we received a payment.
Big one from Walmart.
Walmart, yes, they paid $18,000 twice. And then if you look at the following page, which is page 130, Again, an extensive list of contracts and purchases over 50,000 that we're requesting the approval for each of these vendors. Again, this is a time of year where we get everybody that we think that we are have upcoming services with. Primarily, these are bond projects, and of course, child nutrition has a bulk of things on here as well. And there are some curriculum items, but we tell the campuses or the departments if we know that we will spend, if we could go over that $50,000 threshold, let's go ahead and add them to the approved vendors list because they need to be board approved. So that's why you see several pages this month for our approval of contracts and purchases over 50,000. And then if you'll move down to page 139, which is the last item on my consent agenda, it is a request for us to participate in a new co-op. And this particular co-op, Region 4 recommended it to us, and it does include other municipalities. And again, when we participate in co-ops, it gives us access to more competitive pricing, which is always a good thing for us when we can get a better price point because of the network of vendors that we would be able to select from.
Yeah.
So,
Tamika, I'm just curious to know if, because I know that we participate with the buy board.
Yes.
Which is a purchasing co-op,
Yeah,
but
we
I
have
would
several.
imagine also that perhaps that there's a finite number of products or services provided by particular co-ops. So I'm just assuming that perhaps this co-op includes additional things that may not be on buy board necessarily?
well, there's still some overlap sometimes.
Okay.
There is some overlap. There is not a co-op, if you will, that has specific items that you
Right.
may not necessarily find on another co-op.
I see.
So it just, but they're different vendors.
Right, and we're just gonna look at each and see which one
Where
has
we
the
can get
best
the better price point.
Okay, good, okay.
That is correct.
Tamika, on
Yes, sir.
page 131, can you help me a little bit on the?
Yes,
on,
sir.
the
131?
The Achieve 3,000 and the Renaissance Learning 375,000 and 542,000. Where do we use that at?
Achieve
Instruction.
You mean to answer that?
Yes, Dr. Tomey is going to speak directly to those because I believe they are under her.
Those are,
supervision.
the Achieve 3000 is an intervention program that we use on our high school campuses, and it's to help with language arts. What it does is it takes articles about the same thing, but they put it at reading level so that each child that's in that intervention class is able to read the same information, but they're able to read it because it's on their reading level. And then, so it levels the playing field really as we work with them on their reading instruction. Renaissance Learning is our universal screener that we use. That tells us where our students are so that we can provide appropriate interventions. Besides being a screener at beginning, middle, and end of year, there's also activities and different progress monitoring tools so that we can really see how the kids are progressing. These are annual subscriptions. They're computer programs.
And Mr. Mead, what we're going to be doing is looking at the usage. I know it's automatically renewed, and these are very highly acclaimed programs if used with fidelity. And so they're going to be looking at who uses them, because I'm not going to put anybody on the spot and say, okay, which high schools use them for what purpose, and what have we seen as a result of that usage. But that's what we're going to be looking at, and being able to make recommendations on best practices for students in Aldine ISD and schools in Aldine ISD. So we'll be looking at that. The universal screener is powerful because it looks at all students across the district, and that's something that
All the way
data.
From first grade all the way to.
We can look at where our students are at the beginning of the year and see how they performed. And that's a report that we can share with you all to see where our students are. And then what's powerful is to see how much progress they've made over time. And then at the end of the year. And so we want to see continuous growth. So this is common.
I'd like to ask a question.
Yes, ma'am.
On a computer program such as this, how can you tell where a student needs improvement in fluency or comprehension, or because if you're behind, to me, digital is not going to help you.
Right, like not provide the intervention, but it can assess where you are. So the universal screener just means that everybody takes the same test and it assesses your fluency, what your fluency level is.
It tests more than one,
Discipline?
yes, like pillar, because they have multiple.
Right, like 5
Right.
points. And I can't speak to each one of those specifically. I just am accustomed to using universal screeners. And you want one where it's not based on a teacher. You can assess where every kid is, what their level is, whether it's their Lexile for reading or whether it's their number for fluency.
Because I'll tell you, when I was doing my
Yes, ma'am.
after-school tutorial, and a parent tried to play a trick on me to see if I knew what I was doing. And she came in and I had her child read, and I said, she's a good reader, but she needs eyeglasses. How can digital tell that?
Right. But a good teacher can, yeah.
Screener will give us, that's one of the things as we look at students and how they're progressing, we do send them to the nurse to do eye tests and that type of things as well as it becomes apparent that needs to happen. So the screener helps us really diagnose and figure out where a student is, both in their reading and their math, but also then it gives you more information. But you're right, you need to be able to work with each child and understand where
Find
they
out what
are.
level they're at.
Right, yes, ma'am. And so their levels should improve. If you're reading X amount of words per minute as far as fluency at the beginning of the year, by the middle of the year, we should see some progress. And then by the end of the year, we should even see more progress if the teacher is teaching. And so that's the purpose of those. So we'll see how much we're using them and how well we're using them. Because if you're not using them with fidelity, if everybody's just using the parts they want to use,
Right.
then we're not going to see the progress either.
Help with IR?
Ma'am.
Wouldn't this
Oh,
help in
absolutely, it should, yes,
It is
ma'am.
what I'm saying. I can see this working together
Yes, ma'am.
with the kids.
So good question.
Great questions. Are there any other
One
questions?
thirty-five,
What page?
135.
135, okay.
I'm sorry I'm being so picky, but what I'm seeing with budgets and seeing all this stuff, on CTPA, HISD, Discipline Management Program for John Middle School, Houston Academy, all these schools.
In secure schools?
John's is a brand-new middle school.
Yes,
Why
sir.
do we know they have discipline? Why would we not use it at all the other middle schools?
So,
Why do we pick, why do we pick the program just for these schools?
okay, so we picked several schools because we want principal buy-in, and Marcus Pruitt was one of those principals. We chose a few of those middle schools also. We were in Lewis last year because they're gaining sixth graders and there's a whole new dynamic. So it's not about anticipating behavior issues. It's about making sure that we have our teachers properly trained, 6 through 8, with the principles and the strategies of CMCD. So they're better prepared to move forward with that transition.
But would you not use this with all the different new schools? I mean,
Love to if we had enough money to
okay,
do
so
that.
Okay, my question is, how do we determine which schools we use? That's probably what I'd be asking.
So again, some of the schools we've been in, this is, if you go back, we were in a study for 4 years with CMCD that did a different grant outside of us funded for 4 years. So we were in all of the elementary schools. And then we looked at, for instance, I think Anderson is on the list because they were now going to have, by closing Bethune and having all of them together, we were in Bethune. We wanted to streamline between the magnet group there from Anderson to Houston Academy to Drew. So we have that in place. And then we picked a few of the campuses that principals were accepting and willing to be behind the program, because part of any program is that you've got buy-in at the building level.
And can you tell the difference using this program?
Yes, sir. We actually, and I can have Dr. Freiberg come out if you'd like. We actually, on the elementary side of it, we have a separate entity that comes in and evaluates the effectiveness. So we could bring that to you.
And just another piece to that, all of these vendors and their price proposals are not necessarily coming out of the general fund.
Specifically, the one you're questioning for the University of Houston, the CMCD, Mr. Mead, a portion of that is paid by Title IV funds. So this approval is not funding source specific. So some of these items do not have, I know you're not asking funding questions, but I'm just making that clear that some of these expenses.
That would help me if I saw that, because if I'm looking when times are tough like they are right now for us this year, and I'm looking and I know it's coming from another source, I'm not near as concerned as I am with coming out of, of our budget being
Sure.
in a tough year.
Yes. Yes, because many of these items are bond funded, some of them are special revenue funded, meaning our federal funds that we have. So perhaps going forward, Dr. Goffney, we can
source.
add
You
a
read my
column
mind.
that says funding source. That
Yeah.
way you'll have an idea
That's easy.
as to what funding source is being used to support these programs.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Okay, Safe and Secure Schools, University of Houston. University of Houston presents the programs to these particular schools or someone?
They provide the training. It's a copyrighted, CMCD is a copyright. Dr. Freiberg developed the program. It's been around for years. When we first moved into the project, he actually did a presentation in front of the board, so we can certainly bring him back.
No, what I'm asking
Yes, ma'am.
is, for these schools targeted right here, University of Houston makes presentations to the principal or to an administrator
No, ma'am, they go in and train staff.
and train staff?
Yes, ma'am. And
Okay, now my question is, instead of hiring someone like University of Houston to do it, maybe the staff can take a course, which would be cheaper than $596,000? And then spread it around the campuses like that?
So we do have a component of that, which is a trainer of trainers that they help develop
Okay,
as well.
that's a lot of money. And I'm also, because I'm going to go back a little bit, a couple of months when we were doing the budget. And we said that for the cleaning the pools at the schools, it costs a whole bunch of money. But my contention is, why don't you just certify an employee to learn how to do that and cut that middleman out? To me, the same thing with this. I'm just saying it's a lot of money.
Yes, ma'am. The funding where it comes from is funding specifically for staff development.
Are there any additional questions that the board may have regarding?
Why do we have, just a question, two risk managements? Harris County and then the other, McGriff, Sables.
Right, so if you look at the one that is for 62,000, Ms. Connie, that's for document storage. If you look at that description there through Harris County.
Yeah,
But then we also have
but what do
risk
they do? I
management
mean,
is a department.
they store the,
Harris County Department of Education. That's one of their big things that we do achieve.
And risk management, this is the department that has the budget for these different line items. So that's why risk management is listed again there, because our district property insurance falls under the risk management department, which falls under finance. But the budget for that insurance is held by the director of risk management. So that's why it's two different vendors, if you will, two different types of line items in the budget. Any other questions?
thank you.
You're welcome.
I did have one, let's see. On page 137, and I guess I know what it is. It says Student Transportation Families in Transition Program. Is that where we have to do special busing or something to take kids to certain places, or the one for 280,000?
American Logistics Company? Yes, we contract with them, I believe, to provide additional transportation, required transportation.
So that's students that were coded homeless, and that's part of a contract in which, because if they're in HISD or somewhere else, we will contract and use those bus services, so we're not sending just our buses out. It's actually more economical to contract that out. We either are going to get them or we're taking them home.
Do we have a lot of those, Ken?
Yes, we
did with
do.
Harvey.
With Harvey, we
Had
had
a lot of-
tremendous number.
We had one more on page 230. I don't know if that's your.
May I ask before you go further?
Sure, go ahead.
I was just speaking to a parent about the 21st Century Classroom, which is after-school tutorials. And this $98,000, and the vendor is Bright Bites. How successful has that program been since it started in 2000, I think 15 or 16?
Bright Bites assesses how much your access of technology or something. I don't, what does it do? Remind me?
Surveys.
Surveys, yes. It surveys and assesses common sense technology or something.
She says student, staff, and parent surveys. And the way the parent was explaining to me, it was supposed to help her child with after-school tutorial. But she did not fully take advantage of it. And then I looked it up, and it's been in existence since 2016.
How do we use
But
it?
I don't,
But
but the
there's a difference.
21st Century Grant Program is
It's
separate
different.
from addressing 21st century classroom needs. This is not the 21st Century Grant Program.
But it's named the same.
Yes.
It's
Well,
similar. Yes.
So what is this entailing?
This program, and again, I don't have the details in front of me. This is the technology department that is making this request. Is saying that this Bright Bites program has parent surveys and things of that nature that they utilize to garner feedback from parents about the effectiveness of their program. The 21st Century Grant Program is a completely separate intent and purpose, a completely separate item from what is being itemized here.
Okay, and Technology Services is requesting this funding?
Yes.
And who heads that department?
I don't know which director, I'm sorry.
It's probably Aquila Willery?
It's
or-
instructional.
No.
Okay, so it'd be one of our technology directors, but I
thinking-
need to find out.
Oh,
I don't know
Cindy,
which
you
one
think?
specifically
Okay,
made this request.
Okay.
And Bright Bites is an easy one to see how long,
Yeah.
the usage. Everyone wants to use it, but hardly anybody uses it well. But we'll be able to assess how well we do in Aldine,
Right.
so.
Right.
We could have these vendors, how did we talked about it earlier, about evaluating our vendors. So that I know their expectations, we talked about the expectations, making sure they met the standards and that sort of thing. But a vendor can still meet the standards and all of that kind of stuff, but just like we're evaluating programs to see the effectiveness, can we do the same thing with vendors? Because when we look at the amount of money that is being spent, it would be to our advantage as we move forward and other needs develop and we move forward in our district. That's right, we may have some vendors here that maybe are just dormant, stagnant, for lack of a better word, and it's time to evaluate of what else is out there.
Right, and I think you've been saying that, Dr. Goffman. We've had these ongoing conversations about the importance of everything is not just an automatic renewal. It's
Right.
truly assessing whether or not we really need that program. The keyword buzzword has been program evaluation. That is, of course, at the top of one of the many items on the priority list. But that will help us assess whether or not we need to continue to use these programs.
Some of these vendors as well, because.
Well, the vendors have a program.
I'm thinking already for next year's budget.
Okay.
I'm already thinking about how it's going to impact our budget for next year. And so now's the time to start looking at these things.
Sure.
So that when they, that we're not caught in a situation where, where do we cut?
Right, right. Got it.
Because where it says school bus parts for transportation, north, east, and west, $100,000. Is that an approximation of what that department will need?
Which page are you on, Ms. Bourgeois?
Number 138.
138.
Is that an approximation or? How
The
is that
Thomas
calculated?
Bus Gulf Coast.
Yes, ma'am.
I would think that it's an estimate. It's an estimated cost of services because that's what they get some preliminary
So they don't
information.
automatically get those funds just as needed?
No. It's an estimated
But it's
cost
approximated, I guess, from year to year, what?
based on previous
Oh,
expenses.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Good question.
I have one, on 230.
230.
Texas A&M chapter of Advanced, Tech.
That's curriculum. Are you through?
Oh, I'm
with
sorry,
finance?
I'm sorry.
The president keeps moving.
That's
He wants to
mine.
move along. Do you
I
have
think
anything
he's
else?
ready for me to move forward.
He is through, yes.
I'm gonna let you off the hook.
Um,
Do you have anything else?
anything else?
Clarification on the very last item, of $50,000, Pinnacle Medical Management, employee physicals.
Page 100.
What page?
It's the very last item, page
138.
138.
Oh, that's drug testing.
That's what I thought.
Mhm.
And that's also an approximation.
It's an estimate, yes, ma'am.
See,
Approximation.
something like that is critical.
Mhm.
This is critical, and that's why I'm saying, I think we need a program evaluation, we need a vendor evaluation.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, the final part of my agenda are our discussion items, and these are items that I bring to you on a monthly basis, if you will. And the first item is the monthly tax office report. We have not received our certified values yet, but they should be here any day now. Toward the end of August is when they usually come, and then we'll have the official adoption of the tax rate in September, pending those certified values, and then we'll populate that information in the report. I will tell you that we are looking at a different format for the report, and we'll be sharing that with you in the months coming to look at making the report more user-friendly, more easier on the eyes, easier to understand. So that's one item, just as an FYI. And again, we are monitoring the refunds carefully. We do know that the refunds were higher than we had anticipated last year or this past year. So we are monitoring that carefully. And then if you look on page 144, again, these are standard reports, but this shows you a good bird's eye view of where we are estimated to end the 17-18 year. We are still closing out the books. So as you can see there on the far right-hand bottom corner, 97.5% of the budget. And remember, our goal was to have some savings. And so in just estimating at this time, it's looking like we're going to have at least a $12 million savings because of budget that we did not spend, which is what we were thinking, about 1%. So it appears to be just over 2% at this time. So we'll be finalizing that. So the plans that we did put in place to address, to stop the spending and not use things that, or not get things that we really didn't need, it appears that some of that is working. Okay. And then on page 150, you have the monthly investment report, which shows our interest earnings for the month, which is just over $350,000. And then following that, you have the quarterly investment report, which is, again, a compilation of the previous 3 months' reports that I had shared with you. And then finally, you have the materials auction, which is on page 157. We had 2 auctions. The first one generated just over $9,000, I'm sorry, right at $10,000. And the second, just over $18,000. And then the final item for discussion is the district vendor list, and you can click on that link and see those vendors. And I do have one item for executive session.
Okay. Good.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mead and board members. My agenda is on page 167. The first 3 items are all released from liens on judgments and abstracts where the district has received their portion of the payments, and that we're ready to release our portion of the lien. Any questions on the first 3 items?
Questions, board? No questions?
Well, moving forward then to the policy update, we're now at number 111, and it is on, let's see here. It is on page 172 is where it starts. And there is a list of local policies that have been impacted. And what this update 11 does, it gives us the last few compliance requirements for our last legislative session. A lot of these had to wait on administrative regulations from TEA and other agencies. And so we're doing that last bit. The first one on board member training, we actually already are doing that. And along with the changes at CAA local, you had an attachment that was the vantage point and explanatory points, and they explain most of those. What I would like to point out to you, though, is DEA local. We actually brought that to you it's on page 206. We beat TASB in bringing this policy update. We actually were thinking about it last year, and we said, well, let's just kind of wait and see what other districts are doing, and we brought it to you last month. So I'm bringing it to you again this month with a few little wording changes, but it basically, this is our section that allows for us to pay employees when we have an emergency. And we recall that what we had last year is that there was some provisions of FEMA that we couldn't take advantage of because we did not have a pre-existing policy. So this puts that into place. TASB has provided us with additional language. It's very, very similar to what we had last month, but we're bringing it to you again as part of the policy update. The next one, are there any questions about that? I think we talked about this mostly last month. Okay, the next one is on page 207, and you asked the question, Ms. Garza, about Pinnacle. One of the services that Pinnacle provides is reasonable suspicion testing for our bus drivers or any other drivers that are covered by the Department of Transportation and they have a commercial driver's license. This allows us on the other side of where there are non-drivers, where we will now be allowed to do reasonable suspicion testing, for example, on a campus. Before, our principals and campus administrators, their hands were tied because we did not have a way to get that testing done. We would have to rely on our police department because they have the training to detect when a person is impaired. And so now this policy allows us to provide training to our work location supervisors. And Pinnacle, we talked to them last year, they are already equipped and ready to do this. It's a training. They can do all our principals at once. They can do all our work location supervisors at once. It is very inexpensive, and they have it down to a science. So what it allows us to do is to now take disciplinary action where an employee comes to school impaired, whether because of alcohol or drug abuse. It's really not a complicated policy, but it is something that we've not had in place in the district before. Some districts had this in place. There were very few in Texas that did, but now we have gotten to the level of sophistication that we can provide the training for our supervisors. We can do that through a vendor we already have, and it allows us to hold our employees accountable for being intoxicated or under the influence of drugs at work. Any questions about this policy or about the program? I'm happy to answer.
Okay, I just was wondering if on page 199 is the change for the report of the training of the board member training from, I think previously we've done it in January or December, but this has moved it to before
the general election, or
Right.
the uniform election date, so that would mean it would be in
In
October. And I don't know if this was in relation, if they developed this in relation to did it have anything to do with the required training to be done by September 1, or is this just independent of that?
Oh, this was, I don't know if you recall all of the publicity about the training, that TEA was going in and doing board member training. This came out of the situation that as they went in to train boards, they were finding that board members had not received the required training, and that some districts were just routinely reporting, even though the training had not actually occurred. So, and a lot of that happened after the board member had already been elected. So what we have is, we actually did it last year. We did it in November, I believe we did it last year.
Okay.
Prior to January, when we usually do it. We did it earlier. So this will require us to do it before our election date. So
Yes.
we'll do it at the October board meeting.
Okay.
All right.
That's probably good.
Do we have any other questions with regard to the board policy update, local update?
No questions.
I have additional item for the executive session, and that will end my consent agenda.
Thank you, Kay. Abel, you ready?
Now I am. For the record, if the district ever needs to borrow my all-terrain litter vacuum, it's parked in the garage. So I just thought I'd mention that. It was fun. We saw a picture of it. It's humongous.
Or you looked it up, huh?
My agenda begins on page 214. Mr. Mead and members of the board. First, for you to review is the Welcome Back to School letter on behalf of the board. This letter was approved by Mr. Mead, and you can find it on page 321 of your board book. Hopefully, you've had a chance to review. If there are any questions, if not, I will continue. Next, under the legislative agenda on page 214, wanted to discuss with the board about a special December recognition for Congressman Gene Green. December will be his last month in office, and we wanted to take some time to recognize the congressman and his wife, Helen. As you know, Helen taught at Aldine for many years. I just found out for 20 years, actually, at Aldine High School. Her last year was it?
Aldine High School.
Yeah, she was Aldine, 82 to 2000 or 2002. So we wanted to do something special to recognize him. That'll be his last. He will be in town, and we wanted to just take a moment to recognize him. So just so you know about that, that's for December. I wanted to advise you also that of a letter that Dr. Govney has written in support of Melody Douglas to sit on the board of the North Houston Redevelopment TERS. Dr. Govney and myself sat with her and sat with her. She's an extremely qualified individual with roots in the Acres Homes community. The redevelopment group is improving the lives of our school children by beautifying streets, building the new skate center down here off of Rankin and 45, and the new BMX center, both of which were designed for Olympic qualifying. You will find the letter of support on page 217. Are there any questions about that letter of support? Okay. The calendar is next up on my agenda. First, be advised two date changes. We moved the Meade Middle School name dedication ceremony to Thursday, October 4th, and we have changed the state of the district from mid-October to Thursday, November 1st. We will follow up with more information in the upcoming weeks. We've had to change some of the dates from hotels, and so we're trying to move a lot of our events that we have at these big hotels to other dates, but we will keep you updated on that. But just know that we have moved the state of the district in case you had it on your calendar. On page 218, you will find A communications overview. The overview provides a quick glimpse at some of the work being done by the communications department over the past 30 days. It's been extremely busy. You'll find many back-to-school stories, our online efforts, media coverage, and Blackboard messaging. Blackboard is the instrument that we use to communicate with families via email or telephone. On page 323, you will find the rest of the monthly media update. This section has, again, featured stories over the past month and highlights the most popular social media stories and the reach that they've been able to capture. Finally, on page 342, you will find the list of principals and APs at each campus. They have a picture attached and they are separated by region. If you'd like to request a printed version, let me know and we can provide it to everyone at tomorrow's meeting.
That's
So,
fabulous. I appreciate that so very much. Mhm.
yes, our technology department did a great job trying to find all those, it's a tedious job trying to find all those pictures and making sure it's the right people. Again, if you want a copy of that, please let me know and we can provide you a printed copy for tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon.
I think everybody wants a.
Okay, we will provide it.
Too many changes.
Are there any questions? If not, then that concludes my report, Mr. Mead.
Okay, thank you, Abel.
Thank you for doing that, Abel.
Wonderful.
I'm looking for the picture now. I think we should go back, I think 216.
No, 218.
218, let's go back to page 218.
That was that unrecognizable person?
Yeah, 218, and let's,
We have some blanks.
She changed her hair.
It was 218.
218.
Dr. Booker.
There it is. On page 218, I would like to recognize that picture there. I think I know that lady, and she does a wonderful job making a difference in trying to get school supplies for our children. Thank you so much for what you do.
Oh, that's her?
Yeah.
Oh, I
yeah.
didn't know.
Donations while y'all.
There you go. Keep my mouth shut. Okay.
I will say before we leave communications that it's just so invigorating to see all of the additions that the schools are making to our Twitter feed. For the board members that are not following, on the Aldine webpage on the bottom right-hand corner are the wonderful updates from the schools. And today was especially exciting with the kids posting videos and different things, or not the kids, but the adults posting, the staff posting videos. So it's a wonderful way. Thank you, Abel, to you and your staff for providing those options for us to keep up with what's going on in our district. It's
I can tell you our superintendent was doing a lot of high-fiving with some of these kids. And they were standing at attention. I thought they were going to get in trouble for high-fiving her, but they
yeah,
weren't.
but it's not stagnant. I mean, there's several postings several times a day, which was not true a couple of years, when you first started. And so now I think that even the community members are picking up on the fact that they can, stay tuned to what's going on at the schools through that feed. And then that each of the schools has its own handle or Twitter feed or whatever it is. So they're following that way too.
And as they get more used to getting information from us, I mean, they can easily access the GPS system from the bus, the child nutrition app. It's just, there's a lot of stuff that's available for them. If they knew about it, if they could reach it, and it's available to them. So we're hoping to get to that point where everybody's on board.
Yeah, it's happening, I think.
Ken, you ready?
Yes, sir. President Mead, members of the board, my agenda begins on page 222. I've got 4 documents actually to take a look at. One is for approval, and that's an MOU with Phoenix House. They provide drug and alcohol education, counseling and education. We use them in several of our schools. I would be looking for your approval for tomorrow. Any questions concerning that? Then the rest is on the addendum. On page 378, There is an MOU from Memorial Hermann Clinic. This will be on the agenda next month for approval. Wanted you to take a look at it. That's our clinic that we have over behind the Dunn parking lot. It's been a very successful clinic. We've been operating it for a few years now, and we want to continue that relationship.
I talked to the nurse that runs that over there, and the other day they lost power, and they lost all of their virus stuff. It's all, yeah, they're back on board now. I just wonder if they told me some
Yeah, it's been a
backup generators.
it's been a very powerful program though, because we actually pick kids up at the schools that's mentioned in the MOU and bring them for shots, other things, flu season. It's great to have it there.
I visited them one year. They had a program for losing weight for the kids.
Yes. Yes, they're very positive people. It's great. Are there any questions concerning that?
I'm just going to add, Ken, since we're on the topic of health, are there any plans, I don't remember, at the town center on Aldine Mail Route for any health-related services to be included there?
I don't know. I'd have to go back and take a look. I don't recall health services being part of that. At town center?
At the town center?
Baker Ripley?
Well, not specifically Baker Ripley, anybody providing it.
There's a proposal for, not at Baker Ripley, but there is a proposal for a clinic to come into the area close by. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but they have one on Airline, close to Parker.
Okay. Because we're so limited in those services in the geographic, boundaries of Aldine, that this, obviously the one in the Nimitz area is fabulous, but we need more, many more.
Yeah, it's the same organization that has one in Denver Harbor. They started in Denver Harbor.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, the name
That's
is
okay,
just
that's okay, as long as
escaping me.
we-
But they opened another one in Airline.
Okay.
And where the old HEB used to be close to that. And so they have a proposal with East Aldine to open up a clinic in that area.
We do have a clinic on the other end. We have a Harris County clinic on the other
Is everything
Right.
A pretty good sized clinic, yeah.
Right. This one would offer, I guess, more, what they traditionally do in the East End and in the Airline Northside area, more children type of medical needs and some psychiatric needs, those type of evaluations go on at those areas. And they provide service, not just evaluate.
Okay. Oh, yeah, if we need to do any of the memorandums of understanding of the district support to, even Memorial Hermann or any of the county facilities to add those sorts of services to the Aldine community, that would be
Students there.
something that we need to actively try to do.
We'll look
I
into
don't know what it is, because on page 385, it talks about the MOU with Harris County, talking about the use of Bethune. When we discussed that earlier, it was supposed to be about a health facility, mental health facility.
I don't think it was.
I'm sorry, ma'am. 385 is an interlocal agreement. It won't be about Bethune. I apologize if something's miswritten.
Now, what did you say, Mr. Kniffel?
You mentioned 385.
Yes.
Okay, let me go there. That might be a misprint. Okay, it shouldn't say Bethune on the summary sheet. I apologize. That's not for this interlocal agreement.
Okay.
But since
Because, board, we need to revisit the MOU for Bethune Academy, because reading it reads like a contract. And that's not what an MOU is supposed to be. And the way it's written, we will be obligated to those things when time comes for the city and us to get together on that.
Which one?
correct. So if we can skip to that, that's 391, page 391. That was that original agreement. I think that's what you're referring to, Ms.
Yes.
Bourgeois. So we've had some additional meetings with the mayor's staff. I think Erica Bailey is the lead on that. And they've done some community outreach to get input from the community, and I think that's an additional thing that we were wanting to require, is that we would be in one of those meetings so we could listen, and we're making sure that it's that immediate community that's part of this meeting. They've rendered some drawings, and they have big plans for that building. theater arts, things like that. Basically, the next step would be is them holding a community meeting with those immediate folks in the area. We would be participants but not running the meeting to hear that feedback as well. And then from that point, then there would be a development of a more detailed MOU.
And that's what I'm saying.
Yes, ma'am.
We were initially told that this MOU was just as a listening board.
Correct.
And that was what I was told.
But the way it's
Right.
written, excuse me, but the way it's written, it is non-binding, it's not non-binding, because it says, in the paragraph 1, it says, the parties agree to negotiate the terms of a long-term agreement for the academy. It's saying that we've already agreed to do that.
We're just agreeing to talk.
Right.
Only reason I know that
Wait,
is
wait,
because
agreeing to talk and agreeing to sign a contract are two different things.
Look on the second page, it
Page
says
392.
future agreement.
Any way a MOU is written, that's how it's taken. Now, the first paragraph, it binds us right there. No matter what the second page says, the first paragraph binds us right there. But that's not supposedly what we were having understanding about. And understanding was just to meet and talk about it.
Yes, ma'am, it's to engage in a community conversation between the district, the city, and that community on how they wanted to use Bethune.
Exactly. So why is it saying the parties agree to negotiate the terms of a long term? We haven't,
we are agreeing
but
to,
it's saying that's already a given. It says agreeing to
to negotiate.
negotiate long-term agreements.
Right.
Negotiate, meaning nothing is final.
We're gonna talk about it.
I mean, I'm in contact with the
Wait,
mayor's office.
negotiate
and
a long-term agreement. It's not saying just to talk about it. It's saying we're meeting to bind a long-term agreement. That's what it's saying in black and white.
But before anything is agreed upon, it would be brought to the board. It's my understanding, I didn't sign it, but when we met, I brought a group and I spoke with the others who were in the meeting. It is exciting. They're excited about the work, excited about revitalizing Acres Home.
Well, I'm
and
not
using-
excited about putting a mental facility in Acres Home.
No, that
It
has
had
nothing to do with it.
the mental-
Okay.
No, ma'am, no, ma'am. It was about the arts.
It was
about,
arts, it was tutorials after
yes,
school.
ma'am.
We already have that in our school system. We don't need Bethune for that. We don't need the city to do that.
And so.
It's just a grab to me. It's a
Yes.
land grab.
Yes, ma'am, but we weren't giving over anything other than providing the in-kind, which would be making sure it was
The
maintained.
building was maintained.
And I got excited because I got to go on a tour of it, and I was looking at ways that we could provide different camps during the summer to the children in the neighborhood and give them something to do, and because the location is perfect. So there is some excitement about it, but I've also sat through meetings like this and nothing comes of it. And so I kind of told her that. I said, okay, how likely is it that you're going to be able to raise the money to transform this area or transform this building to what you need to be to meet your needs? And she seemed optimistic. And so,
That I saw the person we met with at the Mayor's Judge Brunch, and there was a huge event, 500 people, lots of sponsors, and she was working the room. She was working the room talking about not only this program, but there are 4 others around the city. And she was getting names and numbers and taking down a lot of information.
but what I do know for sure is we're not going to lead the initiative.
No,
And
they're
so,
they're taking the lead.
They're taking the lead, and then it was my understanding that we wanted to make sure that there was a conversation held, negotiation held, and an opportunity to get feedback from the community to make sure it was something that they desired, that they wanted, and then, of course, the board would have the final.
Correct.
And also notice there is a termination clause.
Yeah, that's what we need to do, terminate it.
But there is,
Agree with that.
Exactly.
Well, I tell you what-
Because that needs to be rewritten. Now, you're an attorney, Paul.
I know.
That first paragraph is saying that we agree to do those things.
I am reading it differently than you're understanding it.
What it says, what it says.
I'm saying to negotiate has a broader meaning to me. That
But it
means,
says what it says, whether you're an attorney or not. I understand words. The words are what counts.
my opinion as an attorney, if you just want to use
I want
yours.
your opinion as an attorney. I just said you should. No, I didn't say that. I said you should understand what paragraph 1 says.
And I
It says
do.
what it
And
says.
I say my understanding of it is different than your reading.
And so you have an actual MOU.
So the only other thing that I would add to this is that I understand completely what we're saying, is that we're talking with the city is looking at the community. But one of the things that we had also said as a school district, even before the city approached us about this, is that we would have discussions with our own Aldine community
Correct.
and members and parents
Correct.
about the future use of Bethune, which we have not yet done.
No, ma'am, we have not.
And so that would be another
The next
important
step.
intermediary step
Correct.
that I believe is important, so that we are responding to the people that we represent, which is the Aldine ISD community. And so I would hope that we, in the middle of all of that, that we're attempting to do that and include our constituents.
I agree.
Well, supposedly that's what the discussions has already been about, the community.
The mayor has led a discussion with the Acres Home community.
Right, that's
And so the
Aldine.
next step, we'll have.
I just want to clarify, because that's the distinction that I'm
Right, yes,
attempting to
ma'am.
make. There is a significant distinction between Aldine ISD, which is within the Acres Home
Mm-hmm.
community to that extent, but the Acres Home community is inclusive of 3 school districts.
Exactly, but
And
when he discusses Aldine, or the area, that's Aldine, that's one of
That's
Aldine's
that's why I
properties.
want to make sure that our constituents are part of the.
And Dr. Garcia,
of
the plan
input.
was we would hold it at Bethune Academy. We would invite our residents, similar to when you did the bond. And I talked to Dr. Branson and he explained what you'd done.
Right.
And so we would do the same thing, and whoever would show up, we would ask the mayor's office to present their proposal, take feedback, talk about how that's gonna benefit our children and go from there. That was what part of, right.
Could it not be where some of our people could use it themselves, our community people, the Aldine people, might want to use it for some of the room for them? No matter what the
We
city
talked
does,
about that
we
too.
want to
We
use
thought
it
about
too.
keeping the library for
Absolutely,
us.
yeah.
We have our own, that's what I'm attempting to say, that Aldine has its own distinct, unique needs as well. And so we want to make sure that our community has input on that too.
The other thing that bothers me is that, I'm still looking at finances, and I'm looking at light bills and stuff like that, and air conditioning bills. I don't want somebody, if I had a rent house, I wouldn't want somebody to be able to just run that electricity bill up and I'm paying for it and they're
Right.
using it. We need to have some sort of protection. I know we have our computer system. Will we control the temperature with our computer system?
So
Yeah, I
that,
thought we said up to something.
we could put up to, it just
Yeah.
depends on how you would want it with the terminations and what they
Because if
want.
we don't have a way to control it, we could have a big bill, and every month we look and see who's increasing or decreasing electricity, and,
Right.
we're proud of doing that, so we don't want to have our people working hard to keep their bill down, and somebody else just let it go crazy with their
Exactly.
condition. Maybe they like it's
Exactly.
55 degrees, and we say 72 is good, so we need to consider that.
Sure.
Mr. President, it was my understanding that they are going to seek out sponsors to fund the programs because the city doesn't have this in their budget. So it's only going to happen to the extent that they find funds to make it happen.
So will have they been discussing that this will be a mental health facility?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Because that's what was brought to the board
No,
a
no,
couple
No,
of
ma'am.
months ago.
No, ma'am.
No,
Wait. Was it or was it not discussed a couple of months ago? As being a
It was
mental
brought
facility?
up, it wasn't
Okay,
an
So that
agenda
discussion
item.
has been dropped.
I haven't heard that discussion.
That,
Yeah.
Which was a mental health facility, possibly.
it was Harris Center, which provides some services, counseling and then referral services. That's what that was in context to.
Okay, because that's the part that I'm against, a mental health
Understood.
facility in that building, because what it will do, it will have people in Acres Homes being tested for mental health ailments that don't exist.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm against that.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
Go ahead, Ken.
Yes, sir. So back on page
It may sound
385.
silly, but that's what happens.
Again, I apologize for the misrepresentation on the summary. 385 is a interlocal agreement with Harris County And the discussion here was if there is a public health emergency, so this will be on the agenda for approval next month as well. If there was an emergency for public health, that they would use, their big discussion is about using M.O. Campbell as a distribution center for a vaccine. The example that's brought up is anthrax. That would be one example. To be able to use the facility, and for the county's purposes, they would limit that, unless they needed to expand it, just as a drive-through facility. So they basically staged the parking lot. People could drive through, pick up the vaccine, and go off, drive off. So that was just for an FYI for you to take a look at. I'll be putting it on the agenda for approval for next month. Any questions concerning that? Okay, that would be all then, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, are you ready? My agenda begins on page 224, and on page 225, you will see the approval of the MOU for the Advise Texas program. This is between Texas A&M and Aldine. This is where we have five Advise Texas program kids, because they're fresh out of college, working with counselors, teachers, and administrators to increase the college going rates at our 5 big high schools. And that's where you had your question.
I did have a question. My question was, why not Carver? Why
Because-
not Carver?
I don't really know the answer to that, but they're not, it's the big comprehensive high schools. I have Charlotte pulling the data on what it looks like right now, and I will ask her specifically, why not Carver?
I just picked that out one for you. I had to have one question to ask you, Sarah, and that was it, okay?
You did that just
Yeah,
for
just
me.
one.
That is the nicest thing anybody said today.
You started out at pre-K, you had nicer things. didn't you,
I
Sarah?
was at a pre-K all morning. It was very fun. But I will find that out for you. So this is just, it's a continuing MOU, and we just need your approval and signature. And then my second consent agenda item is on page 236. This is our student trips that every year in August, we ask you to approve all out-of-state student trips, because sometimes they come up really quickly. So we just have a blanket approval, and then as they come up, I share with you where our kids are going. So I need your approval on that as well. Any questions? Then moving to my discussion agenda on page 237, this is the Head Start and Early Head Start update. Because it's still summer, this is the July 2018 financial report with no program information, because there's no program right now. Although we're back up and running, so next month I will have that for you. Any questions? Then next you'll see on page 240, the class of 2018 scholarship recipients. And it just shows you by high school and student the scholarships that were received, institutional, athletic, military, and various national and state scholarships. And then on page 289.
I do have one
Okay.
more for you. Okay?
Oh,
It's not a
no.
bad one, though.
Okay.
I just want to clear up on the first one, Tanya Banks.
Uh-huh.
It says Aldine Scholarship Foundation Scholarship.
Yes.
It's got to be the foundation. Aldine Foundation Scholarship only gives $1,000, and it's for Lone Star only, so that $20,000 must have come from the Aldine Foundation.
Okay, I need to check with Denise Keaton on that. I know that this year the foundation added additional scholarships.
Well, the Aldine Foundation, the Aldine Scholarship Foundation that I was president of, we moved it into the Aldine Foundation, but our foundation is still funded, and it only funds $1,000 per student to only Lone Star. And that's when I saw that 20,000, I said, well, there's some money I don't know about.
It must be Aldine Education Foundation.
It's not a big deal, the money's been somewhere, but I just wanted to.
What page are you looking at?
Page 241.
241,
First
thank
item.
you. Oh, Tyler Banks,
It says
okay.
Aldine Scholarship Foundation,
To be Aldine.
Education Foundation.
Education Foundation, because we do give more than 1,000.
Yeah,
Okay, I will get that corrected.
no more questions.
Yeah.
It's either the Aldine Education Foundation or it's the Bowl thing, because they said they give $20,000 scholarships.
They did,
So it's one of the two.
right. We'll get that corrected.
But I do like, to continue your report, page 289.
On page 289, you'll find the 2018 scholarship summary comparing to 2016 and 2017. You'll notice that more students received scholarships this year, an increase of 40 students. The number of scholarships that were offered increased by 363, and the total dollar amount increased by $6.6 million. Quite exciting. Okay.
Can we attribute that to our efforts or to the students' efforts?
I would attribute it to both and include Advise Texas counselors as well. I think that we really have a big push on making sure our kids get the money they need. And Denise Keaton will be here tomorrow night to discuss that with you.
Okay, because one of those things we always talk about on stage, on the dais when we're sitting there, are those students that are the top students.
They don't get any scholarships.
And you never hear anything about them other than they were the top 1% of their class. You know,
And I agree, and some of those students don't get the scholarships that I personally think they should be getting, but then others have the 5-minute list, which is very exciting.
So I think one of the things that you say to attribute, I think Charlotte Davis and Denise Keaton, they work very hard to seek out new scholarship opportunities for our students and make sure the counselors are well aware of it. One of them that you'll see in the list is called the Raise Me Scholarship.
We heard about it.
Yeah, so you heard, so that is a new scholarship program that has been out just in the last 3 years. And as you can see, that is a great opportunity because it is, I like to see the scholarships, not just for those first few that come across the stage, but I like to see the announcements as we go deeper and deeper into graduation. And the Raise Me Scholarship really provides that opportunity.
That's true. What's that scholarship?
Well,
It's like GoFundMe, isn't it?
it's similar. I don't think I can articulate it
agree.
very well, but it targets student performance on very specific criteria. Like, for say, if it's a first-generation student, they sign up for the Raise Me scholarships, and they get scholarship funds based on their grades from course to course for different criteria, but very individualized criteria, and it can accumulate through their senior year, and then it goes into their years into college. So if they continue to get good grades, B's and A's, and they're in this program, then they continue to get more funding as they do well through they matriculate through high school and college.
Consequently, the words Raise Me.
Right.
Does it carry over time through college as well?
It does.
Okay.
It does.
Okay, that's good.
All right, and then continuing on page 290, these are the Summer Star 2018 end of course results for our retesters. There are no first-time testers in this. These are our retesters that took the test for at least the second time. Any questions about that? Then moving on to page 293, this is the STAR end of course retest 3-year comparison. So you'll see 2016 to 2017 to 2018 and just how we're doing. Any questions? Then moving on to page 296, what you will see are the 2018 advanced placement scores. And it's kind of exciting. I shared with you already about the Spanish exams, the AP Spanish exams, where 376 kids took the test and 316 scored a 3 or higher. 3 is what you need in order to get college credit. But on page 298, you will see a list of students, and these are the distinctions. There's AP Scholar, which means they receive scores of 3 or higher on 3 AP exams. There's 39 kids. AP Scholars with honors, an average of 3.25 on all their AP exams, and a 3 or higher on 4 or more exams. There were 5 kids. AP Scholars with distinction, an average of 3.5 and a 3 or higher on 5 AP exams. We had 3 students all at MacArthur. And then we have our National AP Scholar. She had an average of at least 4 and a score of 4 or higher on 8 exams, and that's our friend Denise Cordova Carrizales from MacArthur, who is heading to Harvard today. Questions? Then moving on, you'll see the comparison, the AP comparison from 2017 and 18 on page $299. And then I just have two quick reports. The Houston World Series of Dog Shows information is on page 300, you know, Dr. Kelly. But we had 2 blue ribbons and 8 red ribbon winners at the dog show. There's an art show. And then on page 301 and 302, you will see the summary of the 3rd annual Aldine ISD Family Engagement Expo, when more than 2,200 people spent the day or spent Saturday morning with us. Questions?
All good.
Then that concludes my report.
Can I ask something about page 298? First, I'd like to ask, is MacArthur in IR?
Actually, the answer to that is yes.
How could they have so many scholars?
Well, first off, it's a very large high school. Am I on? It's a very large high school, and they have a very intensive AP program over there. And on Saturdays before the AP exam, we offer a boot camp for all of our kids, and many of the MacArthur students come to that boot camp.
Dawn, will you speak to MacArthur for a second and talk about the ones that they missed was based on the lagging data and the fact that I know time is far spent, but I think it's important.
Yes, so MacArthur, they are in IR, they are in IR predominantly because of Domain 3. So Domain 3 for the high schools was that 138 indicators where they looked at various student groups and various indicators, but a lot of it was lagging data. So graduation rate was looked at heavily per subgroup. But this data is current data for the 2017-18 school year, whereas when we did accountability, it was class of 2017. CCMRs was based on class of 2017. So what Dr. Tomey is presenting to you will be used for 2019 accountability.
We are headed in the right direction, and so there were some issues that had to be addressed and cleaned up. And we looked at it from every which way. I mean, Dr. Davis, I think he lost a lot of sleep over this, and because we recognize that MacArthur is one of our high-performing campuses, but the lagging data is what got me to understand it. When you said, okay, it's lagging data, okay. So, and that's the issue, because you don't see the fruits of your labor immediately. This is the manifestation of some past history.
Yes, it is.
If that makes sense.
And this data that you're looking at right now, MacArthur has very high-performing students, just like all of our high schools. The AP performance is really teacher-dependent, training-dependent, accountability-dependent. But what you'll see here with the increase in the MacArthur results here, that is a result of our current principal. The change, the difference that she's made in this first year. This will be attributed, as Dr. Goffney said, to accountability this year, but it didn't factor in last year, unfortunately. So there is good work happening. This right here, again, this is indication of the good work that she's put into that building, really focusing on serving the needs of our top students, and I think this is evidence of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think this is illustrative of the complexity of the accountability system. So it isn't just one thing. It's not just because they failed at a test score. And so I think perhaps, Dr. Goffney, as we move forward and begin to plan professional development for the board, that we can, perhaps include, again, a review of the complexity of this accountability system so that we ourselves, as we look at results, are not necessarily judgmental about a score, and that we begin to understand the complexity of the system and how we, as a result of understanding it better, can be better advocates for our students as we meet with our legislators and the people that organize these systems that judge, in effect, punitively in many cases, the work that we're doing.
Thank you for the explanation.
You're welcome.
It makes sense now.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're at SAS.
Then we go to our school assistant superintendent who's speaking tonight.
That would be me.
Good evening, President Meade, Dr. Goffney, board members. If you'll look at page 303, you'll see the school assistant superintendent agenda. And if you'll look down at the discussion item, you will see the 2018-19 board presentations. And if you'll look at page 305, you will see the topics of board presentation. Most of those are much the same that you've seen in years past. I would like you to look at April and May. That's a change. Instead of having just 1 month where we're celebrating Aldine students, we're celebrating pre-K through middle school in April, and then coming back in May and doing high school, because we have so many students that we want to celebrate. We really need to have 2 months to be able to do that. So that's really the big difference in this schedule for next year, for this year. All right, and then if we move to recognitions, Stacy Smith will again award grants. And then the presentation of the board program is the 2018 student scholarships, and that is Denise Keaton, and she'll be presenting that for you. Any questions? That's all I have.
If you'll notice too, another difference I think that's going to be noted is for March, we're going to have a focus on early childhood. And that brings us to our, an update on our early childhood, our first festival that Dr. Gomez led in collaboration or partnership with Good Reason Houston. It was phenomenal, and I just wanted you guys to hear about it. Because a lot of our issues, I know we spent a lot of time talking about STAR testing, but it all begins with pre-K. The sooner we can get our kids enrolled in school, and the more of our kids who qualify, especially, and Mr. Meade, our board president, and I have had conversations about universal pre-K for all, but the sooner we can get our kids, I'm telling you, a quality pre-K program impacts everything. And so we've got to focus on it and not just leave it to chance. We have these amazing schools that look great. We have teachers who are doing a great job, principals who are phenomenal, so we need to make sure and get all of our students who qualify. So Dr. Gomez.
Okay. Good evening, President Meade, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Goffney. I will be addressing the Aldine Early Education Festival. It was July the 21st at Aldine Senior. It was an amazing event. We had a great response from our community. This is our first year to have this event, and originally we did not know how many people to prepare for, so we were thinking maybe around 300 participants, and we were very excited to have over 1,000 people in attendance. We are already in the reflection process, and we're looking at the early stages of next year's early pre-K festival. And we're looking at possibly late spring of 2019 to have our 2.0 festival. And currently, every parent that is going through pre-K enrollment has a survey they're completing. It's an online survey which gives us data to how do we better meet their needs? How do we help the community understand the pre-K enrollment process? What do we need to do to improve that? So those are efforts that are currently underway. And it did begin as an Early Matters campaign, so promoting pre-K awareness was initially our focus, but it has evolved, and we're very excited to share some of the stages of the actual festival. So in Harris County in 2017-2018, we had over 52,000 students who were eligible for pre-K enrollment, but only 38,000 students took advantage of this opportunity. Again, this is Harris County numbers. They're not specific to Aldine, but we are researching those numbers. Good Reason Houston is preparing data for us so we can get a better count of Aldine numbers. But if you can see here, we have over 14,000 students that did not take advantage of pre-K last year. So that's a huge responsibility and a great opportunity on our part to make sure that we're doing everything we can to promote pre-K enrollment, to promote the process, and to assist parents with this program. Good Reason Houston has partnered with 6 different districts, Aldine being one of them. I'm going to share with you some of the activities that they have done with this enrollment process. So with the partnership of Aldine ISD, specifically our 12 pre-K principals, our communications department, and our district leadership team, Good Reason Houston and Aldine together have focused on pre-K awareness. So you can see some of our outreach programs that we have here, and specifically these are some of the areas that we've targeted. So we have a strong outreach through social media. As it was mentioned earlier, if you look on the Aldine website, you can see some of the tweets tweets, but we had a lot of Twitter use promoting the pre-K enrollment process as well as Facebook. In addition, there was parent testimonials, not only from Harris County, but also Aldine ISD parents. And those are available as well on Twitter. Community pre-K website, Aldine ISD and the Harris County website promoted this event. It gave parents very clear instructions as what were the requirements and what guidelines they needed to meet, what documentation was necessary. We also had a text messaging platform where parents could text an email address or a phone number so they could get responses, immediate responses to the actual enrollment process. Then there was a flyer design that actually extended to yard signs, to billboards, and postcards that were sent home. Now this final one here was unique to Aldine, our pre-K enrollment event. So as part of the pre-K festival, Aldine, which is, you saw that there was other districts that partnered with Good Reason Houston. They did not have this part of the campaign. We were sitting in a meeting in June, and the Good Reason Houston team was meeting with our elementary SAS team and Dr. Goffney. And I was looking at Dr. Goffney, and you could just see this little sparkle in her eye. And before I knew it, she tells the Good Reason team, I think we need to do pre-K enrollment. And they look at each other and they said, that's a great idea. And from there, we moved forward, and we quickly, not only did we have a festival, but we made everything possible so that we could enroll students on site at the festival. And I'll share those numbers with you shortly. So we've talked a lot about we've talked a lot about district enrollment. So I want to show you 5 years of data for pre-K enrollment. And if you'll look at each year individually, here's our 13-14 enrollment data for our 8 pre-K campuses here. I realize we have 12, but here's a pre-K for 8, data for 8 of our campuses. So moving to the 14-15 year, you'll see a decline in enrollment. Looking at 15-16, not only do we see a decline by campus, but also as a district totals. Our 16-17, and finally our 17-18. And these are the numbers that are directly reported to PEEMS. So again, this pre-K festival, this awareness program is a great opportunity for us to increase these numbers. And as we've been visiting our schools today, the numbers have gone up in pre-K. At LESA this morning, they had over 900 students enrolled, which is really outstanding to see the growth. So the Aldine Early Matters campaign, here are all of our business partners that joined together. Of course, Good Reason Houston was our primary contact, but we had the Barbara Bush Literacy Foundation along with the public libraries providing free books to our children. Children's Museum was there with hands-on activities as well as the YMCA. So we had structured activities on site for all of the students that were there. And we also had the Houston Zoo, which brought their mobile zoo with them, and children had an opportunity to touch pets and to hear all about the animals that they brought with them. HEB provided some food. We had lunch, we had snacks, popcorn, snow cones, cotton candy, and a full lunch for everyone. And because we originally planned for 300, they had to order pizza and make up the difference for the audience that we had there. And we had Texas Children's Hospital there providing free immunization, which was a beautiful thing. You walked into a classroom, they had about 20 seats there waiting for people that were waiting to get their immunizations. It looked like a miniature clinic. And so that was wonderful, and I know I'm leaving out some, but that's the gist of our business partners that were there. For Aldine ISD, a big shout out to Mr. Walter Stewart, the principal of Aldine Senior, who graciously hosted the event. We also had the police department there on site supporting it. Custodial team worked very hard before and after the event. Food service provided the lunch for all of our guests. Technology service had computers set up for us ready for the enrollment process. Our communications department, led by Abel, did a fantastic job communicating this to our parents. We had several volunteers, and of course, all of our pre-K principals and staff were on site. Here is a copy or a photo of our yard signs. They were both in Spanish and English. I know for sure they were at each pre-K center and our elementary, but they may have been at our intermediate through high school as well. I just cannot confirm that. We had billboards. There was 8 billboards across the district. These are 2 that I saw personally. The one on the left is on Lauder Road, and the one on the right I saw on Aldine Westfield. And those were around the district. Every marquee, we were asked to promote the festival. And you can see an example there. We had a school messenger, so I'm calling it school messenger, but Abel talked about this earlier. It's the Blackboard messenger. So Dr. Goffney recorded a message in English. We had the English and Spanish recorded, and there was 3 call-outs to promote the event. In addition, here's a copy of the postcard. 10,000 postcards went out to promote the event to our community in Spanish and in English. Here you see a Twitter announcement for the pre-K event. It was an indoor event. It was a beautiful sunny day. It was a little warm outside, but it was great because it was indoors. We were inside in the air conditioned. So it was great. You'll see that there was free food and family fun for everyone. Here is another Twitter announcement in Spanish. And here's the same one that we saw earlier. Some of these are from Facebook and others are from Twitter. We did have videos that were recorded by Aldine parents and by parents in Harris County in Spanish and in English. These are not live links, but I can send them to you if you'd like to see those. And here's another one that we saw. We had an announcement in the local newspaper, and I did not put this in here, but Fox 26 News also had a live segment for us.
And you were the star, and we appreciate
And I was
it.
the star.
You represent Aldine.
Pre-K Festival, so Aldine ISD had a direct link to talk about the eligibility criteria, what documentation they needed, and any questions that they needed about the event. And it was also with the Harris County. Here's the number for the text platform. So if you text that number, you can still get live responses to your questions. Here's our results. All 12 pre-K campuses were on site. We had over 40 Aldine ISD volunteers running the different stations, over 1,200 in attendance. And for our first year, I think that was a good number. Over 100 immunizations were provided free of cost for 40 students. The Barbara Bush Foundation provided over 800 books, and we had 11 business partners on site. How many students actually enrolled? We had 53 students enroll at the festival, with 10 that returned to the home campus because they were missing some documentation. Our biggest campus was Keeble with 10 enrolled on site, and then Lessa that had 9. And finally, are there any questions? Thank you, and these are just a few photos from the event.
When will we know the enrollment of our pre-K for this year?
Mr. Kneppel's working on it now. We have some total numbers, but he's gonna work on it by campus as the days.
Right, so we have totals per campus, but we still need to balance first before we can break it down by grade level.
Mhm. Very low-hanging fruit, and what you, we were talking, one of the things that we realized when we were in that meeting is we don't have anyone who oversees early childhood education. And so what Dr. Gomez did not also share was during that meeting, she had a month to plan this with Good Reason Houston. So kudos to Dr. Gomez for her leadership. She did a fantastic job. The other thing I'll say is, as you think about the numbers and the different things that we're going to be doing to evaluate programs, needs assessments, audits, and all of that, Good Reason Houston is a very strong partner. I have been amazed at what they're willing to do to support public education. In addition, they've agreed to help with my transition. All the surveys and everything that I've done, they have a statistician, and they said that their staff is at my disposal to simplify the data and put it in a way that I can present to you all. So they'll be helping our research department and me with the transition. So very excited about the partnership with them. And we'll be looking at pre-K and the numbers and looking at ways that we can enhance pre-K. And again, Dr. Gomez has her own job that she's doing, but she's taken on this, and we appreciate the support of everybody. I think everybody from the leadership team, everybody from cabinet attended and participated and supported, as well as all of our pre-K principals who were excited about it as well.
Very good. It's an awesome, successful event.
And if we're through with our regular meeting, we'll adjourn into executive session under section 551071, consultation with attorney, section 551074, personnel matters, Section 551072, real estate, Section 551076, security personnel or devices, and Section 551082, student disciplinary matter, if any, and under the Open Meetings Act, it is now 9:49.
Have they already done? Oh, she's getting a head start. Okay, good. Great.
Yeah. Here, where is
Okay.
Connie?
No, no, no.
Connie.
Yeah, Ms.
Okay.
Avalos. Ms. Avalos, where's your purse?
She has it.
You have it?
Connie has
Oh, you good?
Okay, we will reconvene into
Your bag
open
bag?
session. It is now 10:19 PM. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Okay.
Johnny? Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
All in favor?
Aye. Got it.
10:19.
Thank you.
So we'll have a.